evening, everyone. My name is J.R. Romano. I'm the chairman of the Connecticut Republican Party. And at this point, we're going to call out Angelica Ellis to lead us in the national anthem.
Oh, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleam, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we've watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
So first and foremost, I want to thank everyone who came out tonight to listen to Republicans talk about how we're going to save this state. It's going to be long, but it's going to be enjoyable. And I'm so honored to introduce our moderators for tonight. From CTNewsJunkie, Christine Stewart. And for WFSB, Sue Rapp. Thank you so much.
I want to thank everyone for joining us. Can move this a little closer.
Do you want me to start with the...
Yes.
Okay. Before we start, we just wanted to remind the audience to keep their applause until the end. We wanted to remind the audience and the viewers also...
I can't hear you.
There's no sound? Okay. We wanted to remind the audience and the viewers at home that neither the Republican Party or the candidates received copies of our questions in advance of this debate, so they have no idea what we're going to ask them. As JR said, this is a cumulative time debate, and if a candidate doesn't want to answer a particular question, they don't have to. And also the candidates will get 40 seconds to rebut a response from another candidate who attacks them. Now let's get started.
So without further waiting, we want to introduce the candidates by order. First one, Mark Boughton. Steve Obsitnik. Dave Walker. Peter Lumaj. Prasad Srinivasan. Mark Lauretti. Tim Herbst. Toni Boucher. And our final candidate tonight, Mike Handler. The first question tonight is for all of you, and that is, with the state facing such terrible financial news all the time, and, oh, I'm sorry. You get a minute opening speech. I'm sorry about that. Can't trust people.
All right, I can give you the first question. Thank you, Susan, and thank you very much, State GOP. It's my honor and privilege to be here this evening. Thank you, JR. My name is Mark Boughton. I'm mayor of the city of Danbury, and I'm very proud and honored to be participating in this event. You know, we've got a lot of problems here in the state of Connecticut, and we have a lot of issues. But I want to just share with you quickly that we have an opportunity here in 2018 to change Connecticut. With all of our problems and all of our challenges, I look at this particular time as the time to be able to make a difference and to turn our state around. We've got a proposal in our campaign to eliminate the income tax over 10 years. We've got proposals to restructure and reorganize state government. We've got proposals to put our working men and women back to work. We've got proposals to fix your failing foundations here out in eastern Connecticut. We've got proposals to pretty much handle every challenge that we face. It's not going to be easy. There's a lot of work that we have to do. But at the end of the day, there's only one candidate up here that has served in the legislature, has been a mayor of a large urban center in 1 consecutive terms, has owned a small business, has taught high school, and is certainly proud to be standing on this stage, and that's me. So tonight I look forward to hearing the questions. I look forward to hearing from my friends here that are up on stage. I think it's also important that we remember that we're all on the same team. The most important thing that can happen out of this election cycle is that we elect a Republican governor in November. God bless you and God bless America. Thank you.
Good evening. Our air, dirt, and water is exactly the same in Massachusetts as it is in Connecticut. So why are they growing and we're shedding people and jobs? Why? Because our career politicians have failed us. It's time for us to secure our fiscal situation in Connecticut. Look, I grew up in Stamford. I attended the U.S. Naval Academy. I did my submarine service out in the eastern part of the state. As a high-tech CEO and job creator, I've created hundreds of good jobs, the type of jobs we need here in Connecticut now more than ever. But let's just not sugarcoat it. We are addressing a $4 billion deficit, a deficit that was created by career politicians. Let me ask you this. Do you trust another career politician to solve that problem? Because I don't. As your governor, I will address the problem head on. What successful CEOs do, what I do, is solve problems. Because we have the strength and the assets to do just that. And my plan to reinvent Connecticut will restore fiscal security to our state and will create industry-led jobs ecosystems. And together, we will turn around the moving vans. My name is Steve Obsitnik, and I'm proud to be up here to try to earn your support to be the next governor of Connecticut. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Dave Walker. I want to thank the organizers. I want to thank the moderators for this evening. I'm from Bridgeport, Connecticut. My family came to this state, my family came to this country in the 1680s, and yet I'm only the second person in my direct line to graduate from college. My father was the first. I'm a certified public accountant. I have 40 years plus of leadership experience in the private sector, the public sector, and the not-for-profit sector. I've been fortunate to have the highest position in the country for my profession, Comptroller and Auditor General of the United States, for 10 years. I've been fortunate to be admitted to the International Accounting Hall of Fame. But when my wife and I moved to Bridgeport 8 years ago, it was the idea of retiring in this state. But in that 8 years, our home value has gone down a third. Our property taxes have gone up 55% because of failed leadership at the state and local level, and they haven't even started treating the disease. I am the only candidate up here or anywhere, Democrat or Republican, that has a proven track record of making government smaller, more economical, more efficient, more effective, and more respected. I have restructured pension and health care programs. That's what we need to do in Connecticut. Thank you very much.
Good evening, and thank you very much for being here. My name is Peter Lumaj. As my neighbor Dave Walker told you, that he's been here for a number of years, and the American dream is still alive. He's the second one to graduate from college since they came to the United States years ago. I would be at least the fourth or the fifth one in my family to graduate from college. I graduated from college. I graduated from law school. My nieces and nephews did that. My brother did that. The reason why I'm telling you this, the American dream is alive. The American dream is alive. You just have to pursue it properly. I know that as a refugee who came from Albania 29 years ago. I came here with speaking no English, not having any money, not knowing anyone, A church took my brothers and I in. And eventually, an Albanian American family took us in. They gave me an opportunity in this country. They gave me the opportunity to go to college, graduate from college. I worked for the Giuliani administration investigating white-collar crimes, went to law school, became an attorney, got married. I'm happily married for 20 years.
Your time
I'm a
is
family
up.
man. I'm a businessman. I'm a small business owner. I'm an attorney, and I'll change this place around.
Thank you.
You deserve a conservative like me to run this state for the next 4 years. Thank you very much.
I want to thank all of you for being here this evening, and a special thanks to my veteran friends out there and to the veterans who are here on stage for your service to our nation, a service for which we can never repay the debt. I am Prasad Srinivasan. Thank you. Thank you very much. I am Prasad Srinivasan. I'm a state representative from the town of Glastonbury, currently in my 4th term. I'm a career physician. I've been in practice for almost, I can't even believe this, 38 years. I know Connecticut. I live in Connecticut. I work in Connecticut. I know Connecticut firsthand. My wife and I have 2 adult children. Both of them graduated through our public schools here in Glastonbury. And now my daughter has moved with her growing family to Glastonbury.
Your time is about over.
It is for that generation and for generations to come that we need to leave behind a better and a brighter Connecticut. Thank you.
Okay, I'm getting good at it. I'm getting better.
Thank you and good evening, everyone. As I stand here tonight, I enter my 27th year as the mayor of the city of Shelton. I've been elected 14 times. You can all imagine that the electorate was very different 26 years ago as opposed to what it is today. And the reason I tell you that is because when you've been elected that many times by a different caste, there's got to be a common theme that has allowed people to do that. I've allowed people to give me the opportunity to serve as an elected official. So I pose this question. For those of you who own your own home in Connecticut, who own a piece of real estate and pay taxes, think about what your taxes was 10 years ago as opposed to what it is today. What do you think it's done? I can tell you what it's done in Shelton. For those of you who don't know about Shelton, if you had a piece of property that you bought 10 years ago and paid taxes on it, today, the taxes, depending on what your assessment is either the same, it went down $25,
Time's up.
or it went up $25.
Time's up.
It's all about being consistent. Thank you.
The timer, so it goes each one, so the girl is the timer.
Good evening. It's an immense honor to be here this evening in the 2nd Congressional District, and it's an incredibly humbling opportunity for me to stand on this stage with a lot of good people seeking the Republican nomination for governor of the state of Connecticut. Everywhere I go in the state of Connecticut, I hear the same thing. People have lost faith in their government. They often ask me, will tomorrow be better than today? And the biggest question for Republicans in selecting the nominee of our party is whether we will nominate candidates that are battle-tested and battle-ready to not only win in November, but to get ready on day one to go to work to bringing the necessary reforms to fixing our government. We need proven reformers and Hartford outsiders that are committed to real change. In this campaign, you're going to hear a lot of things. And the last thing we need now is politicians that are going to tell you what you want to hear to win the next election. Now more than ever, we need leaders that are focused on the next generation that are going to tell you what you need to hear to get our state back on track. It's about substantive reform. I have done it in Trumbull with pensions, with taxes, with a nationally recognized school system, and with an economy that's grown 64.5% in the last 8 years, despite a state economy and a great recession. We can do it in Connecticut.
My mother, my father, my brother, and I left a dirt farm in Italy in the mid-50s and came to Naugatuck, Connecticut. We came with nothing. No money, no education, not speaking a word of English. My father worked 3 minimum wage jobs every day and expected us to work alongside with him when we weren't doing our homework, because he told us if we worked hard and got an education, we could get somewhere, and we did. My brother became one of the highest award winners in science in the country and became an astrophysicist. I got my MBA at UConn and have worked for the leading corporations of this country. We succeeded, but that Connecticut that we knew and that we loved is hardly recognizable. People are leaving in droves, and it's just not hedge fund managers from Greenwich. It's hotel operators, it's gasoline workers at your gasoline stops, it's your florist. Some of them have given up, but I refuse to give up. I'm determined to lead Connecticut back, to do the things that are required, and it's going to take drastic measures. It's going to take eliminating the state income tax immediately and the estate tax. It's going to take reduction of costs that are so high.
You're almost out of time now.
But it will take someone that can actually win, and I hope to convince you that we need a different kind of candidate that people are looking for that could actually win. Thank you.
We're all here for the same exact reason. Our state is on fiscal life support. We have a $100 billion ticking time bomb in our hands, and it's affecting our jobs, and it's destroying our home values. My name is Mike Handler, and I'm the only candidate with the relevant public and private sector success and experience that can turn our state's financial crisis around. Our problems are complicated. There's no question about it, but they are absolutely fixable. I have the confidence to say this because I've just fixed the same exact problems in the city of Stamford over the last 5.5 years. The same problems created by the exact same team that's up in Hartford today. I've cleaned up after Dannel Malloy in Stamford, and I will do it again as your governor. But you all have a job to do this evening as well, and that's to hold all of us accountable. I'm asking you to look past the platitudes, the one-liners, the finger-pointing and the blame, and look for someone who can provide real solutions, who you can instill your trust upon to protect your home values. Thank you.
We thank you for your opening statements, and we remind you to try to adhere to the timelines. We want to keep the debate rolling and get as many questions in as possible. So the first question is, with the state facing such a terrible economic news almost all the time, and people leaving the state and jobs leaving the state, and we had some bad news today with the state's transportation fund, why would you want to be governor?
Listen, folks, I enjoy a challenge. Where people see bad and they see things not going well, I see a possibility. And I believe in our state. And if we cash in on that promise of possibility, and if we say this is an opportunity for us to redesign state government, to make us smaller, to make us more efficient, to practice things like automating and creating greater efficiencies, to outsourcing things, we'll be able to make a difference in our state. We'll be able to make a dent on the metrics that you're describing. But at the end of the day, what we're really going to have to do is adopt a pro-growth approach to our economy. For too long, this legislature, led by the Democrats, have spent their time picking the pocket of every small, medium-sized, large business they can, and have started a death spiral that we're desperately trying to pull ourselves out. In the last 2 months, we lost 11,000 jobs. Over the last 2 years, we've lost $6 billion in wealth that's left this state. There's no reason why that should have to happen. This is an opportunity for us. I look forward to an opportunity. I enjoy fixing things. When I was in Danbury, when I took office, we had a fund balance. Our savings account was $1 million. Today, it's $30 million because we examined every single dollar and every single item that's spent. When I was in Danbury, we had a system there. We couldn't approve a permit. It would take us years, sometimes or months to approve a permit. Today, we can approve a permit in 2 days to build in our city. And because of that, we've returned 107% of the jobs lost during the Great Recession. We have one of the lowest unemployment rates in the state of Connecticut, and we have the lowest crime rate of any major city in the state of Connecticut. That's the same kind of can-do attitude I'm going to bring to the governor's office, and that's what I'm going to expect and demand of the people that work in my administration.
Yes, Steve?
Yeah, and if we could just a second, if we could just hold the applause to the end, it'll get us through all of these questions quicker. Thank you.
Great idea. Look, I served in the submarine force, and there are a few times in my life when I found myself
about maybe less than half the height of this room, under a 10,000-ton Russian submarine. And they had no idea that you're there monitoring them. That you realize that in life, your own self-interest doesn't matter. What matters is the mission. The mission is what matters. And the career politicians in Hartford have taken us down a road to ruin. So I've chased Russian submarines around. In my business world, I've competed against Cisco, Microsoft, and Google. I'm prepared to do this, but more importantly, I want to restore this state to the prosperity it gave me and my family when I was growing up as a kid in Stanford. That's why I'm doing this. Thank you.
My wife and I chose Connecticut. We chose Connecticut because it is a beautiful place with a proud history, with a great quality of life, with a super geographic location, with tremendous potential. But as I mentioned, in the 8 years that we've lived here, our home value has gone down a third, our property taxes have gone up 55%, and they have not even started treating the disease. We've gone from a top 5 state to a bottom 5 state in the last 30 years. The USS Connecticut is sinking, but it's not too late to save our ship of state. The reason I'm running is because I have a proven track record of being able to make government organizations smaller, more economical, more efficient, more effective, and more respected. A proven track record of not engaging in reform, which is Little League activity, but radical reconstruction, which is what we need to do at the state government and also what we need to do with pensions and health care. That's what we need to do. So I personally believe, if you check me out at davewalkerct.com, you will find out that I've actually done what needs to be done. And I think I'm the right person at the right place at the right time to try to help save our state. We have decided, my wife and I, who got married in college, we have decided to fight rather than flee. And with your help, we'll win. Thank you.
Thank you.
You have to answer these questions in any particular order, or just we can skip it?
No, that is the question.
Okay. The reason why I decided to run for governor to seek the nomination is because there are no other Republicans running for this office. You don't see a true conservative in our state seeking the nomination. I'm the only one who's doing that. You're going to see professional politicians and career politicians and bureaucrats seeking this nomination. If they betrayed your trust once, you shouldn't trust them again. I'm a true conservative. I'm a fearless conservative. I'm running as a conservative. A limited government, a constitutional government, a government that stays out of your way. It's the only government that will allow you to prosper and reach prosperity again. I'll be the one to establish that. Thank you.
I want to have Connecticut the same opportunity that I had when I moved to Connecticut in 1980. I too chose to come to Connecticut having finished my residency and fellowship in Chicago. And 1980, for those of you who are old enough to remember 1980, this is a gorgeous state. It still is. I firmly believe that with the right direction, with the right leadership, and if one has the energy and the capacity to lead us in the right direction, this state will be what you and I will always want the state to be, better and brighter for generations to come. And that is why I'm seeking this high office in our state.
I don't think that there's a question in anyone's mind that Connecticut is worth fighting for. And it's a state that has a very proud past and a rich tradition of success. And there are still some pockets within this state where that success exists. You know, I got involved 27 years ago because I thought I could make a difference. I posed a question to you earlier about what your taxes would be 10 years ago as opposed to today, and started to say that in the city of Shelton, if you looked at your taxes 10 years ago and look at them today, they haven't changed. Or if they have changed, they've gone down by $100, or maybe up by 25. So, with that said, prosperity breeds prosperity. Connecticut didn't get in this situation because we didn't tax enough. That's been an inherent problem here. I think we're all aware of that. It's all about being able to provide services that are affordable for our taxpayers to pay. And look at everyone from every different socioeconomic background. People are leaving the state in droves because Connecticut is just not affordable. But it can be. And we can do a much better job than what the other party has done over the last 25 years. And so the municipality that I run, we have focused on creating prosperity for everyone. See, because if I don't raise the taxes, tell me who it benefits. Every working family, every senior citizen with their own home who are on a fixed income and can't afford the property tax increase year in and year out. Every business, everyone. And we shouldn't be picking winners and losers. This is a tremendous state worth fighting for, and it's really all about our money, and we should protect that. Thank you.
To put everyone's mind at ease, the USS Connecticut was built here in the 2nd Congressional District at Electric Boat. It has 101 sailors on it, and I assure you it's not sinking. What I want to say is that the reason why I'm in this race is because I think about somebody like my late grandmother, who was raised by a single mother during the Great Depression in the south end of Bridgeport. And she had a mother who could not read or write in English. And they were on the verge of welfare, but never took a handout because they always wanted the opportunity to have a leg up, to have a chance at the American dream, to have a chance to build a business in the Connecticut that they once knew. But that Connecticut no longer exists. That promise of Connecticut does not live up to the reality of Connecticut. So why do I want to take this assignment on? Because I like tough assignments. I like to be a change agent, and I like to bring reform. And that's something we had to do 8 years ago with a budget deficit, with a pension fund that was only funded at 27%, with a town that saw a credit rating downgrade the year before I took office, property taxes increasing 54% in the 8 years preceding my term. And I am proud that 8 years later, we delivered 8 balanced budgets, 2 tax cuts, enacted pension reform that fully funded our obligations and resulted in a credit upgrade, 1 step below the AAA from all 3 rating agencies, a nationally ranked school system, a growing economy, and a community that has been ranked nationally by Caldwell Banker. It's the #1 booming community in Connecticut. Family Circle magazine ranked it the 7th best town in the nation to raise a family, and Realtor.com said our school system was in the top 10 most in demand in the nation. If we can do it at the local level, we can do it for the people of the state of Connecticut. We can right this ship, but if we're going to change Hartford, we have to change the people we send there.
I get asked this question all the time. Why would anyone want to take on one of the worst political jobs in the United States of America? Well, you've heard a little bit of my story. It is because I believe in Connecticut. I believe in its people. It gave me and my family everything. We were at the very bottom, the poorest family in Naugatuck, in a factory town. And we accomplished great things. I've had the privilege over a lifetime of working for the Westin Hotels, building and running 1,000-room hotels throughout the country, managing big operations, having to deal with unionization, then working for Jack Welch's division at GE and starting my own small businesses, and now, to this very day, working for an investment firm, traveling all over the country, meeting with chairmen of the board and presidents of major corporations and nonprofits. I have learned a great deal over that period of time, and I was incredibly fortunate to be given the opportunity to serve on my Board of Ed and negotiate local contracts, and serve on my Board of Selectmen and negotiate local contracts, serve on the State Board of Education. I thought that was it. That's the height of anything I could ever be allowed to do. How lucky am I? I have to pinch myself. But no, I served in the House of Representatives, in the minority, and now in the State Senate, in the minority until just this January, working uphill against all of the proposals that are damaging to the state of Connecticut, trying to change things. Now we finally have an opportunity to do that. And I want to take that opportunity because I didn't realize I was in boot camp. I was in Fort Bragg to take on the battle of the survival, the financial survival of the state of Connecticut. I was learning the process, the people on the majority side, building those relationships and learning how to negotiate budgets, dealing with $1 million and $1 billion budgets. And in order to effect that change, though, we need to be able to win. People are looking for something different. They don't want the same candidates that they presented for in the past. They want someone that can resonate with the cities, but also has lived in an affluent part of Connecticut, both. They want someone that is a businesswoman who knows how to grow jobs, and someone that knows local and state government, because you don't have time for a learning curve. You've got to get right to it. Drastic measures have to take place immediately. And finally, you have to prove that you can win. And I have been so fortunate. Didn't happen my first 2 times running for the Senate, but these last 3 times, I actually received the most votes of anyone in the state of Connecticut, Democrat or Republican, principally by a crossover vote. We have to appeal. We are a deep blue state to the other side of the aisle, to independents and to Republicans. We have to be able to win to affect any of this for any change to take place. So be very careful when you're thinking about this. Who do you think can bring the votes so that we can move this state forward and make it the best state, the envy of the country that we all know and we all love? Thank you.
So unlike Toni, people that know me well have never asked me why I'm running for governor, notwithstanding the fact that I've met you twice now and you've asked me 3 times in the 2 times that we've met. People that know my background know that I've spent over 20 years in an ambulance, responding to people's worst possible times. They know me as the emergency management director for the town of New Canaan, who responds during crises and manages our public safety departments. In the city of Stamford, I've managed our way out of a fiscal crisis that should sound eerily familiar to all of you. Unfunded long-term liabilities, contracts that had never been negotiated, businesses that we operated as a city that we had no business ever being in that needed to be privatized. We had very little cash reserves when I arrived. We've got over $55 million in cash in the balance sheet today. My skill set fits directly into what our needs are at the state level. My wife and I have 4 wonderful daughters. And my wife and daughters were born in the state. I came here in 2000. And when I got to Connecticut, we had plenty of debt in 2000. We always said to ourselves, if we don't fix our balance sheet, all this responsibility is going to fall on our grandchildren. And what a shame that's going to be. And for 10 years, we did absolutely nothing but spend more and lever up more. And then we said, wow, we got a lot of debt in our balance sheet. If we don't fix this problem, it's going to be falling in the laps of our children. That's a shame. We shouldn't be doing that to our children. Well, again, we've done nothing for 10 years but spend more. And now that liability is ours. There's no place else to push it. I fixed these problems in Stamford. I will do it again for the state.
So please keep your applause to a minimum. Thank you.
So Connecticut's fixed costs have risen from 35% of general fund spending in the year 2000 to 49% in fiscal year 2017. That's an increase of 14%. Over the past 17 years, Connecticut's non-fixed costs have declined by $210 million, or 2.3%. I've heard several Republican candidates say that Connecticut has a spending problem. If that's the case, then if elected, where would you cut spending, or what state agency would you eliminate? It's anyone. Good.
I think we take turns.
You're supposed to use your paddles, but if you don't, just stand up. It's fine.
Paddle raise. Yeah.
Sorry, Steve Obsitnik.
Steve Obsitnik.
Okay.
So the question was about the rising fixed costs and how would you address it. Let me put it this way. I don't know if you realize this. The Department of Labor of the state of Connecticut last year audited 90 sports leagues. And by sports leagues, I mean your kids' sports leagues. Wilton lacrosse, Branford ice hockey, you name it. Now, why did they audit your sports leagues? Because those referees on the weekend, we probably have a few of you in the crowd here, they said, you're actually not a contractor, you're actually a full-time employee. And there should have been withholding taxes paid on you and all the complicated stuff you have to do to run a business. Well, if we have enough people in the Department of Labor to audit our kids' sports leagues, I think you start there. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Because in the end of the day, the way we solve our problem is realizing that our government has become too large, too outdated, too expensive, and not efficient enough. And we have to effectively take about 20%, become 20% more efficient to make our government do what it's supposed to do. I believe government does three things. One, keep people safe. Number two, take care of people that can't take care of themselves. And number three, keep as much money in everyone else's pockets, because that's what drives transaction. That's what grows economies. So you can retire, have a bar mitzvah, build a business. You should decide. We shouldn't send more money to Hartford, because whenever we send money to Hartford, what happens? It goes to pay fixed costs. And we've got to close that down. Thank you very much.
Dave Walker, you were the next to raise your paddle.
Thank you very much. Connecticut state government has grown too big, promised too much, and must restructure. Fixed costs are a big problem, and they're growing much faster than non-fixed costs. The number one financial problem in this state on the spending side is state employee compensation and benefits. Based upon reasonable assumptions, we have a $71 billion underfunding in pensions and health care. Pensions are funded about 25 cents on the dollar. Retiree health care is funded 1 to 2 cents on the dollar. Career politicians and labor union leaders have sold out the taxpayers by creating arrangements that promise too much and don't fund enough. We must, and I will, if I'm your governor, override the state employee benefit agreement, override the anti-layoff provision, and look at what government is doing and how government is doing business. Government has an important role to play, but there are a number of things that our government is doing now that should be done by the not-for-profit sector. And in some cases, there are things that we should partner with the private sector in order to be able to do. We are one of the few states in the union that actually compete with the not-for-profit sector to provide social services. And because we have the highest total compensation as compared to the private sector of any state in the country, and it's because the retirement benefits, not the cash, we ought to be paying more in cash comp. Because of that, it costs us 2 to 3 times as much to provide the same level of services with less quality. It causes us to cut back on education funding, to cut back on the social safety net, to cut back on infrastructure investment. So the bottom line is, we have to do something with regard to our compensation and benefits cost. We have to right-size government, and we have to rationalize what government is doing and how it does business. Here's the good news. I've done it, and I can do it again. Thank you.
Prasad Srinivasan.
My plan is to bring about appropriate pension reform. We need that. And how could we do that? Can it be done? The answer is yes. Number one, we would include only the base pay in the calculations. No more overtime, no more mandated overtime. Look at the cost of living index and adjust the cost of living index to inflation and not this artificial number of 2 to 8%. That will give us billions of dollars in the out years. I will close the loopholes that we have in the current system. Right now, if somebody is discharged because of what they have done at the job, the way they've treated somebody at the job, and suspended, guess what? That employee, even though is suspended, can still collect the pension benefits. And that to me is a loophole, and I would definitely make sure I'll address that as well. So the fixed costs I will address, no question about it at all, and bring that down. And on the other side, talking about the agencies, we'll have a top-to-bottom approach. Review the agencies, how are they functioning, and make sure we are cost-effective. I have a small business. My ratio of worker to a supervisor is about 10 to 11 to 1 supervisor. At the state level, it's 5 or 6 workers to a supervisor. Why? Why do we need that? That is unacceptable. Look at nonprofits. They deliver services in a far more effective and equally compassionate way at a fraction of a cost. I would look at and reduce the cost there. And finally, Medicaid, patients who are on Medicaid services, which is 20% of our state. We spend $4 billion on an annual budget on our Medicaid, and I would make sure we address the abuse and the fraud that happens in the Medicaid system. So balancing the two sides on the long-term obligations as well as on the state agencies, we will be able to do what is right for Connecticut.
Thank you. We have Peter Lumaj and then Tim Herbst.
Thank you. It's interesting, the question that was just asked to us, does the government spend too much? Let me just give an example. The president of Yukon makes about $550,000 a year, your tax money, my tax money, in addition to 2 mansions. Just think about that. You and I are paying that. We have $1.7 billion a year that we spend on welfare. Your tax money, my tax money. We have created an entitlement society in our state that unless we implement common sense conservative principles and make tough decisions, we're not going to turn the state around. Every state agency should be downsized or cut 14%. That is my plan. Everyone who receives welfare in our state is going to be there for 3 years. It's a safety net, not a way of life. And you're going to be drug tested. It's going to be random or mandatory. We're going to tell people that you're going to have to become productive members of our society. And they're going to have to do it. Unless we make these decisions that people and businesses are going to feel comfortable to live in our state, unless we put a roadblock on 95 South, people and businesses are leaving every day. I, for one, I have in my plan, anyone who's making less than $100,000 a year shouldn't pay any state income tax. That should be rolled back. Business taxes should be rolled back. Sales tax, roll it back. For any state agency that passes a regulation, 4 should be repealed. These are conservative, common sense principles. I'm the only one who's got the fortitude and the character to tell you the truth, that unless we take these steps and unless we take these measures, you and I are going to think about leaving the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Tim Herbst?
If we're going to fix this problem, we have to first start with a fundamental principle that we have to lead by example. And in this campaign, I have taken a lead by example pledge. I have said that if I am elected governor, I'm going to refuse a pension from the state of Connecticut just like I did in Trumbull. I've said that all my agency heads are going to be required to do the same thing. I don't believe a part-time legislature should be able to collect a pension, and I certainly don't think they should be able to use their mileage reimbursement to pad their pensions, which they have done, and which we called out. So to get to the root of your question, if you look at the budget from 2010 to 2017, and you look at the money we spend on K-12 education, higher education, Medicaid, infrastructure, all of those line items as a percent of our total budget have gone down. So to Christine's point, the fixed costs of pension and salaries and benefits continue to go up. Now, if we're going to take on the CBAC agreement, and we're going to say we're going to go to court, we're going to challenge it, I hope we have a question later about what's going to happen if that goes to the Supreme Court, and the fact that Governor Malloy has selected 6 out of the 7 justices and is about to appoint the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. These agreements are going to be legally challenged, but there's going to be hurdles. But here's what it comes down to. Employees are going to have to contribute more towards their pensions, existing employees. We're going to have to put new hires into defined contribution plans. We are giving out retiree health care that is more generous than what members of Congress receive. And we know that because 5 current and former members of the United States Congress and Senate, Republican and Democrat, elect to keep their Connecticut coverage over what the federal government provides because they contribute virtually nothing towards their health insurance. And that's why we are contributing 1 cent on the dollar to our retiree health benefits, of which we have a $21 billion unfunded liability. Pensions, salaries, benefits are the biggest drivers of fixed costs in the budget. But when we talk about agencies that we're going to reform, the social service component is key. There are 501c3 not-for-profits in our state that perform 3 times the quality of service for 1/3 of the cost. We currently have a hybrid model. We should go to one system where we empower our 501c3s. If I'm elected governor on day one, I'm going to go to work to dismantle the Connecticut Department of Motor Vehicles as we know it. It is the most inefficient, ineffective state agency in our government. You should not have to take off from work to renew your license. You shouldn't have to call in sick to turn in a license plate. It is a textbook definition of the lack of automation and efficiency in our government. And that's why we need to appoint an inspector general that is committed to rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse at every level of our state government. If I'm elected governor, I am committed to doing that on day one.
Senator Boucher.
Fringe benefits for state employees used to be about 50% of a salary. It's risen to nearly 85% of a salary. We're in between 26 and 40% higher than our neighboring states in state costs for employees. State employees make on average $10,000 more than Massachusetts state employees and $5,000 more a year than New York state employees. All the proposals we've just been talking about, and one of the biggest areas, I think, for reform is taking collective bargaining out of the entire benefit package negotiations for state employees. Most other states, 47, do not do this way. And all of the other reforms, converting to 401k plans, to changing the pension system, to changing the healthcare system that we have that is so expensive, is all well and good. We have actually proposed that as Republicans in almost every budget negotiation we have. In fact, I have several proposals on the hopper that do every single thing that was just mentioned here. That is all well and good, but you have to be able to know how to negotiate, because you're going to have to negotiate these, and you have to be able to win and be able to have the votes to pass this. In addition to all of the reforms to really reduce the structural costs, remember, we also have to improve our economy and grow jobs. So I would say, in addition to reforming our pensions, to reducing state costs, to going to zero-based budgeting for all of our departments and rooting out fraud, waste, duplications, we have to have good tax policy. And I would maintain the first number one job would be to eliminate the state income tax, and we could do that by going back to 1991 tax structure, because we want to bring those jobs and people back to improve our tax base. Thank you.
Mayor Lauretti, and just a reminder that the question was about where you would cut spending.
We've heard a lot of dialogue tonight about what the problems are and who are the only people up on the stage that have the ability to accomplish the end goal here. But I want to tell you that I've had the opportunity over the last 26 years to serve as mayor under 4 different governors, and I've watched them wind this thing up. And it took over 30 years for Connecticut to get to this point, and we're not getting out of it right away. So the moral to the story is that there are several things that have to be done to solve Connecticut's spending and revenue problem. And one sure way that is a proven theory about doing that is growing your tax base, incorporating more taxpayers into the equation. People are leaving Connecticut, and those people are good taxpayers. And so that's creating a lot of problems for us. So when you've had the fortune of putting together 26 budgets, generating 26 budget surpluses, growing your grand list from $1 billion to $5 billion over 25 years, I think you understand what it takes. You know, I deal with unions. I have to negotiate union contracts. In 26 years, I've never been to binding arbitration. Our employees understand what fair wages and benefits are. My pensions are 100% funded and have been for over 20 years. And how do we accomplish all that? We're predictable and we're affordable. And we're growing our tax base. Connecticut needs to grow its tax base. And you do that through job creation. You attract more companies. In 1991, Shelton was home to 400 businesses. Today it's home to 1,500 businesses. Companies like Perkin-Elmer, Pitney Bowes, Prudential, Sikorsky, Unilever, United Healthcare. The list goes on and on. BIC. The list goes on and on. Why? The unfortunate part is that these companies are coming from other places in Connecticut. And they're coming to Shelton. They're coming to Shelton because we're affordable and we're predictable. That's what Connecticut used to be. And we need to get back to that point.
Mr. Handler, and then we'll go to Mr. Boughton.
So we need to be honest with ourselves and honest with our employees. We have a $100 billion unfunded liability in our state. By a show of hands in this room, who here in the private sector working today is expecting a pension when they retire? What's good for you has to be good for our employees. Here's the reality. We've heard a lot of good suggestions this debate and the last debate about where we would cut and things we would fix. But let's look at it real closely. You look at the DMV, and there isn't a single person alive that's had a pleasant experience in the Department of Vehicles in some time now. It's a very easy target, and absolutely we need to fix it. In the past, we've mentioned privatizing the Whiting Forensic Hospital, where there's horrendous abuse, and it can be done far better in the private sector. We've talked about a platform based on removing mileage credit that's pensionable in state legislators. All very good ideas, all things that we must do. But if we do all those things together, collectively achieve all of them in our first 100 days, that is not even a rounding error on the problem we face as a state. So we've got to get out of the pension business. We're beyond reform. If you look at what Rhode Island did a number of years ago, Gina Raimondo traveled throughout the state explaining to people why unfunded pension liabilities were unsustainable. She made two suggestions: push back the retirement age by 5 years and remove the cost of living adjustments in the pensions. Those two changes saved 20% of their pension liability. A $5 billion problem became a $4 billion problem. The problem is that was done in 2011. For 7 years, our unfunded liabilities have grown exponentially, and they're crowding out everything else we want to do as a state. So we don't have the luxury of reform. We need to get out of the pension business overnight. There's a myth that's going around that the governor is pro-labor. I fundamentally disagree. You're not someone's friend when you give them a benefit that you have no intention of ever funding. Far better for us to find out about it today, when we can do something about it, than to find out when they need these benefits the most. So let's convert all of our pensions into 401k style retirement plans, just like all the rest of you in the real world have today. A fully funded, fully portable, tax-deferred 401k. At the end of the day, we save billions of dollars, get out of a business that's costing us more money each and every year, and they look just like the rest of you in the real world. All these other ideas are great. We need to do these things. It was mentioned today that we can legislate our way out of this. I think that is true. We do need to work on removing our employee benefits from the collective bargaining arena. But it's not going to be that easy, folks. The way you do this is through negotiations. Not by being the loudest person in the room or hitting people in the head with a hammer or pounding your fists on a table. It's by explaining to employees why the benefits they have are not going to be there. I've negotiated the first contract for the City of Stamford Police Department in over 12 years, taking back substantive benefits that we could not afford. I did it by explaining to employees what the term unsustainable means for them and their families. And once we did that, we were able to get substantive reform that was affordable for taxpayers. Our benefits for our employees have to be fair for employees, but also for taxpayers. In the Stamford Police Department example, that contract passed with a 92% approval rating at the Stamford Police Union. And today we enjoy a benefit that we can actually fully fund. And the City of Stamford fully funds 100% of its pensions and retiree health care benefits. And that's where we need to go as a state. Thank you.
Mayor Boughton.
I think everybody's articulated some great ideas here this evening, and I think everybody's just a little bit right. But I want to really kind of address the question quickly. And by the way, for the life of me, why would we ever give up our relationship with AAA, who was a perfect vendor to run our Department of Motor Vehicles? I'll never know. I think we all agree on that. And we can ask questions about why is the Department of Labor budget 5 times the size of our economic development budget? Why is there no investment in tourism, particularly out here in Eastern Connecticut when we're getting hammered by Rhode Island, by Massachusetts, and other places? Those are all really good questions. But the first step in every journey has to talk about doing something. And the first thing we've got to do is we've got to stop the bleeding. We've got to go out and we've got to tell our new employees that come to work for the state of Connecticut that we can no longer afford this benefit system that we've currently had, that we're going to move to a 457 or a 401k, whatever plan you want to move to eliminate the pension so that you bend the cost curve in the long term by doing that right away. It's one thing we did in Danbury immediately. We've got to go to our employees and say, look, retiree medical, which is a huge liability that nobody talks about, is not sustainable for us in the future. And we've got to develop a plan to that. And we've got to be able to explain to our employees that if we don't do these things that's been mentioned, you're not going to get anything. The reality is that the state of Connecticut will be looking at insolvency. That's the hard truth. The reality is we won't even be able to put a state trooper out on the highway because we'll be spending so much on our benefits and wages. Those are all things that have to do. Then we've got to look at specific departments, and I want to mention this because Christine asked for specificity here. Let's take the Board of Regents, for example. The Board of Regents is the biggest dumping ground for political hacks that I've ever seen. We have a president of the Board of Regents who we pay over $300,000 a year to manage the president of our state, each individual state university, who we pay $200,000 a year. We've got a public information officer at the Board of Regents to manage the other public information officers at each of the 4 state universities and at the community colleges. And the worst part about that is our students pay the price for that in the form of more and more tuition increases to the point where they can't afford it anymore. Our people going back into the workforce pay the price for this, who maybe want to get new training, who maybe are a little bit older, because they can't afford this. And that hurts our economy. So we've got to grow our economy, like it's already been mentioned. And we do that by starving the beast. We eliminate the state income tax over the next 10 years. We say to the legislature, who has a culture of spending, spending, and spending, and when you're not looking spending more, no more. There's no more money. Not only that, we're not going to let you tap into any other revenue streams until you reform your act. And then we prioritize what programs we want. A tragedy occurred several weeks ago where a young man died because we couldn't have computers that could talk to each other in DCF. Tragic. And yet we give the city of Hartford $20 million because they can't manage their budget in this next budget. Shame on them. Shame on them. We can do better. And a good Republican governor using Republican values, Republican ideas will make that happen.
Okay, our next question has to do with companies and jobs. And we've all heard the headlines and we've seen them, GE, Aetna. Although a bit of a snag today, we understand that the deal with Aetna may have fallen through because some $9 million in incentives, New York may be pulling that off the table. Regardless, companies are seeing other states as more attractive. What would you do to make Connecticut more attractive? Would you offer them more money? What would you do? Dave Walker?
Yeah, thank you very much, Susan. I've met with Jeff Immelt, who's chairman, CEO, was until recently, of GE. I've met with Mark Bertolini, who's chairman, CEO of Aetna. I've met with a number of other CEOs who are still in the state, who are thinking about leaving the state. You cannot bribe companies to stay here. CEOs, boards of directors, and sophisticated investors know how to read financial statements. Connecticut is broke. Connecticut has raided all of its trust funds. Connecticut has a rainy day trust fund equal to 1 to 2% of state spending. Connecticut has $71 billion of unfunded pension and retiree health care obligations that represent future tax increases or future cuts in services and investments in the future absent a change in course. And as a result, you have to make the structural changes that are necessary that will cause people to want to stay here. And once you put your finances in order and right-size government, then you can sell Connecticut to get people to try to want to come here. The first thing you have to do on the tax side, you have to eliminate the estate tax and the gift tax because they are driving wealthy people out of the state, and they pay a disproportionate amount of our income taxes as well as other taxes. Secondly, you have to eliminate the 20% surtax on the corporations. You have to change the basis of taxation from what we have now. It's too complicated. I won't go into it, but I'm a CPA, so I know a fair amount about it. If you do that, we won't lose that much money. We'll get people to stay here, and then you have to demonstrate that we're going to make the kinds of changes that I talked about before so that we can provide additional tax relief over time. Anybody who tells you that we can eliminate the income tax immediately or within 8 to 10 years is not credible on their face. If you don't show me a plan on how you're going to pay for it, It's the kind of political pandering that we've seen that has gotten us to where we are today. I'm all for leading by example.
Dave Walker, you're out
but
of
we've
time.
got to tell the truth. Thank you very much.
Mayor Boughton,
I want to respond to.
you want to respond? Go ahead.
I perceive that as an attack, so I want to. It really is Steve had a paddle up before me. So.
Steve?
Look, I think I'm the only one up on this stage who's ever made a decision about starting a business, where to place a business, why to place a business where you do. I started 3 high-tech companies. When you go home later, you pause your TV, you order a movie on demand, you talk to that woman Siri on your iPhone, you're using technology that I had a hand in creating. And I'm proud of saying that because Connecticut needs more jobs like that. So my last business, Quintel, we manufacture cellular antennas, smart antennas for AT&T and Verizon. We sell to 5 operators around the world. I mean, 5 continents around the world. That business is in Rochester, New York, and it broke my heart as a Connecticut kid to have to put it there. Do you know why? Because we needed trained people, and they had the type of engineers that I needed in Rochester. I needed universities to help finish the product. I needed suppliers and manufacturers and things like that, and Connecticut didn't have it for us. And business people, and I've talked to my fair share of CEOs and small business owners in this state, we have heads, we have hearts, and we have pocketbooks. And we balance all those when we make decisions. So we need to create an environment that attracts innovative businesses like the ones I've been fortunate to create. Our GDP has not grown in 12 years, $230 billion. So this is what I think we focus on. Do you realize we have 42 colleges in this state? 42. 1/3 of the U.S. economy is within 500 miles of us. 40 million consumers are in a 200-mile radius. We have a lot of assets. That hasn't moved out yet. So we need to leverage those assets, those universities, to attract businesses. That attracts youth and millennials, which builds the concert halls and the restaurants and everything else. It's happening in Brooklyn and New York and Boston. And it's happening in Rochester, New York. But if you've never experienced an ecosystem, you'll never know what it takes to create it. So, yes, we have to address all the fiscal mess that we're talking about and the fiscal security that we're talking about. Because if we don't get the size of government down, it won't be affordable to live here. If we don't get our tax rate structure here correctly, people will go to other businesses. But in the end of the day, you have to inspire the resources of why people will build a business here. And I'm the only person in this race who's ever done that and knows what it means to do that. Thank you.
Prasad Srinivasan.
My plan to bring businesses and retain businesses in our state will consist of, 1, have a predictable environment. That's what businesses want. Businesses need to have the confidence that their investment today will not be worthless tomorrow. Why? Because the legislature passed a tax hike, because we have some mandate, some regulations, and punitive damages to boot. That predictable environment is what I will create right from the beginning. Businesses are looking for independent contractors. That's the way of the current that's how businesses are done. And I would encourage and make it easy for independent contractors to have their businesses in our state. And the third point that I would do is make sure we have an adequate and talented workforce. Right now, as we speak, there are 25,000 jobs available, but nobody to take them because we don't have the adequate, talented workforce. So we need to work with vocational schools, right from school all the way to a career, so that we create that pipeline. That's how I would have businesses have the confidence to keep the lights on and the doors open in Connecticut.
Mayor Lauretti.
I think the question was, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, what would we do to keep businesses and grow businesses in the state of Connecticut?
Correct.
As a small business owner for 21 years in the state of Connecticut, I understand wholeheartedly what it's like to meet a payroll, make a mortgage payment, deal with the labor department, deal with all of the mandates that come your way as a small business owner. It's part of what motivated me to run for mayor so many years ago. Never being able to understand how business can just pass off all these regulations to you and that you had to follow them and they don't, and couldn't make it work. I couldn't raise my prices because I couldn't meet the payments at the end of the month. I had to become more creative. And I've done that as mayor in Shelton too. When you look at the number of businesses that have come into my community over the last 26 years, there's a reason for that. And the reason is because we are predictable, and we are stable, and we are affordable. When you don't raise taxes for 9 years in a row, we have not had a tax increase in the city of Shelton for 9 years. So the gap between me and everybody else just got larger. Gives me a distinct advantage. It's what makes me more affordable than anybody else. The state of Connecticut needs to do that, and that needs to come in many different forms. We heard people talk about eliminating taxes. Yes, taxes is certainly part of the equation. As you heard me say, I have been able to stabilize my taxes and not increase them year in and year out. The state of Connecticut needs to do that. We can create an incentive for our corporate community by eliminating the corporate business tax. And certainly, the death tax is something that should absolutely go away. It's a small part of the equation on the revenue side of the budget, but yet it's a big impediment to keeping our wealth in the state. So those things definitely need to happen. But beyond that, the next governor really needs to have a working relationship with the legislature.
You're out of time.
Because the legislature is certainly going to be a big part of solving Connecticut's problems.
Thank you. Senator Boucher?
Businesses need a Connecticut governor that believes in business, is pro-business, that's immersed in business, that picks commissioners that are pro-business. Not one that says profit is bad. Can you believe I've had to actually debate that profit is essential for a business to run? I've had to defend businesses against 19% tax assessment on investment advisory services, killing the very golden goose of Connecticut's financial services industry, where 30% of all hedge funds in the world are in Greenwich, Connecticut, many of which are now leaving. I understand this because I've been older than many of these here and had many business experiences, including having small family business of our own, where we didn't take a paycheck for 6 months so we can keep people employed. We know what payroll cost does. Connecticut's payroll costs are 25% to 30% higher than other places. And since I'm out of time, we'll talk about it more as we go on. Thank you.
Tim Herbst?
The three most important decisions the next governor is going to make to improve the business climate in the state of Connecticut is who you appoint your OPM secretary, who you appoint the commissioner of DECD, and who you appoint the commissioner of DOT. Because I have to tell you, in addition to what's been said already, the two things that impact our ability to keep existing businesses and encourage new businesses to come to Connecticut is the regulatory environment in the state of Connecticut and the lack of investment in our infrastructure to make us competitive with the tri-state area and the rest of New England. We have a regulatory environment in the state of Connecticut that punishes businesses and punishes job creators. I can't tell you the horror stories I've heard in every corner of the state of Connecticut when a business owner, an entrepreneur, a developer shared with me how long it's taken them to get a permit from the DOT or the DEP, or what the Department of Labor has done to them. We have to change the regulatory environment. We have to cut the red tape. And finally, what we have to do is we have to invest in our infrastructure. Today it was announced $4 billion worth of infrastructure investment is being put on hold because the State Transportation Fund is on the verge of insolvency. That is not only a quality of life issue, it's an economic development issue. We have got to come up with a plan to make the STF solvent to invest in our infrastructure.
Thank you. Mayor Boughton?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to say that for those of us that are calling for the elimination of the state income tax, that's the Republican Party that I remember. It's the Republican Party that stood at the state capitol and rallied the 30,000 people opposing the implementation of the #1 the number one business-killing tax that we pay. There are other ones, sure. But if you remember the Connecticut before we implemented the income tax, you'll remember a Connecticut where people fought to come here, where businesses wanted to stay here and expand and hire people, where families said, I'm going to pick Connecticut to be. So we really don't have a choice on this. We've got to chart a new course. And at the beginning of this discussion, I talked a little bit about the fact that this is an opportunity for us. It's an opportunity to redesign state government. It's an opportunity to refine our permitting process. And in our plan, we call for a single point of entry permit process where the permits are reviewed under one roof quickly. And so you'll get answers and certainty about whether or not you can start your business and how to get the best permit from the state. So at the end of the day, with the new SALT discussions in the federal tax code,
Mayor Boughton,
we
you're
don't have
out
a
of
choice
time.
but to eliminate the state income tax. And
Thank
I'm proud
you.
to defend that.
Thank you. Peter Lumaj?
It's interesting when you hear Mayor Boughton tell you that his town is doing great. You hear Tim Herbst telling you the same thing, Toni Boucher, Dave Walker. I mean, if our towns were doing so great under their leadership, how come people are leaving the state instead of moving out, out of state? Tim Herbst grew government by 11%. Mark Boughton agrees to create another layer of government. Just think about this. We're losing business to New York City, who has a socialist mayor. Just think about it. And all of these elected officials over here, including Dr. Prasad, are telling you that they did a wonderful job for the past 27 years, as Mark Lauretti will tell you that he's been in the office, yet we're bleeding to death, job and businesses every day. Just think about it for a second. Can they really be trusted for anything? Professional politicians. What our state has been doing, we have been, just think about it, okay? Well, I'll give you a chance to think about it, 2 seconds, because I'm running out of time. But just think about it. Our state has been rewarding failure and punishing achievement, and that is socialism. Think about this. You come to our state illegally and live here for 2 years and go to high school. You get in-state tuition, sanctuary cities, and a driver's license. It pays to be legal in our state. If I were the governor, that will be reversed with an executive order. We'll no longer reward failure. We're going to reward achievement. None of these guys will do that because they've been part of that system for too long.
I see now everyone has found their paddles.
Yes.
So
where's the 40-second? Because some of you are out of time. I want to make sure that that I know where the 40-second timer is.
She's over there.
She's over there. Oh, okay. She's over there. Okay. So we will do 40 seconds at a time of rebuttal to the, I guess, career politicians.
If we're going to reward achievement, I don't think that there's anybody in the state that hasn't raised taxes in 9 years, and I have. Now, maybe some people that live and pay taxes in Fairfield may have become a little bit overzealous at the fact that they pay a lot more than they should, and they want to be in my community. You're welcome to come because many people have, and so have many businesses.
I think Tim Herbst is next.
I have to tell you, it's not easy holding the line on spending when you have to invest $48.8 million additional dollars into your pension fund to fully fund your pension obligations. That causes spending to go up. And since you mentioned Mayor Boughton and Mayor Lauretti and myself, we have, and Senator Boucher, the four of us have one thing in common that you do not have. We have won an election. And you have to win an election if you're going to govern the state of Connecticut.
I think Senator Boucher is next.
I would like to disabuse all of you that many of us on this stage are not career politicians. We just explained how many of us work in the private sector every single day, including today. So I could rush here tonight to be with all of you. We are a part-time citizen legislature, which means that many of us, if not most, have other jobs. Some are even doctors, for that matter. And by the way, we've been in the minority until just this last January. We've been blocking, tackling, and fighting against all of these proposals and have the knowledge, the skills, the know-how, and understanding of the people to actually get something done and actually win an election. We do. So please, when you think about Connecticut and any of us on this stage, we are not career politicians. In fact, we bring the real world to the legislature all the time, fighting hard for us, and that's what we need. We need electable people so we can change the state.
Mayor Boughton, would you like to add to this lively debate?
I would. I just want to say it's really just a math problem, and the reason that we are faced with challenges, and the reason that Peter doesn't see any moving trucks come out of Danbury is because people are moving into Danbury at a record pace. We're attracting new business every day. We're attracting residents every day. We had 300 new students enroll in our schools just this year alone. So that's really the difference between somebody that wants to talk at a very high level about, about certain philosophies about governing, and the difference between actually being on the ground every day and governing and working hard for your community. And that's why this election in 2018, it's critical. They've all spoken to it, and they're all right. They're critical that we nominate somebody who's electable, who's had a demonstrated ability to win in a large urban area over and over and over again, including my last election last November that I won by almost 65% of the vote. So I'm proud of the work that I've done in Danbury. I'm proud of our community, and I can assure you we're one city where people aren't leaving, people are coming into.
Thank you.
Representative Srinivasan.
If you heard it right, it was said that I am proud of the wonderful things that this legislature has done. And to the best of my memory, I don't recall saying that at all on this debate at all. So Mr. Lumaj, I would suggest, as a physician, a friendly recommendation, maybe you need to get your ears checked as to what I say here and what you quote me on. It is serious, extremely serious what we talk about here, and just to lash out and talk about things that don't even happen on the stage is an embarrassment to the Republican Party. We do not need such an embarrassment.
I should respond to this, actually. I have some time.
I don't think we can stop you.
Oh, this is fine. Most of these people ran out of time, so I said I'll give them 40 seconds to respond to whatever they want, because they just spoke nonsense to all of you. The reason why they are telling you that they are not professional politicians, because they are afraid of you now. They have failed our state. If Tim Herbst is telling you that he's electable, he realized that he's not going to get elected, because last year he won by 200 votes, and he knew he's not going to get elected this year, so he decided to run for governor. If you're so proud of what you did at the legislature in Hartford, and everyone is so proud of it, how come our state is failing? But we had a budget by the Republicans proposed and almost passed until they decided on their own to vote against it. The Republicans defeated themselves. We have a Republican Party, some of them in Hartford, who are afraid to be Republicans. Only a true conservative who has the character and the fortitude to turn the state around is going to help you and I in the next 4 years. I am the true conservative. I'm the guy who's going to go to Hartford and dismantle the mentality of Hartford that they believe that your money and my money is their money. We're going to turn that off. With your help, I will do that.
All right, for the sake of time, and because Peter Lumaj mentioned Tim Herbst, we're going to let Tim Herbst respond, and then we're going to go to the break.
Microphone working?
Okay.
Well, you know, I'm glad we're finally getting a little lively at these debates. You came in 44,000 votes behind me in 2014, so I'd like to find out how you're going to win an election. And I also want to point out, if you're this hard-blooded conservative, why is it that I was the only candidate on this stage to take on the judicial activism that's going on the state Supreme Court while you've been hiding under a rock?
Okay, we're going to have to go to a break and continue this lively debate in 10 minutes.
10 minutes? Yeah, we're going to take a 10-minute break. Get up, loose your legs. We're going to come back. All right? It's getting fun, guys. That's why we're here. All right, everyone. Let's get started with round 2. I just want to take the time to thank everyone here. You've been a wonderful audience. And can we give a round of applause for the moderators who have the, the difficult task of keeping this in order? But without further ado, I think we have another question coming.
We do have another question, but first I just wanted to explain, just in case the audience wasn't clear on how this whole thing works. So each of the candidates gets 6 minutes. They can use that 6 minutes however they want to answer the question. They can take as long as they want or as little time as they want to answer a question. And then if a candidate's name is mentioned during the answering of that question, that candidate gets 40 seconds to rebut. And that doesn't count towards the time if they still have time left on the clock. So we're just going to get right back to it. The candidate who didn't vote in 2016 is not here, but I'm going to ask, I guess, Mr. Lumaj, did you vote for Trump in 2016, and do you support his agenda?
I voted for Trump, I supported Trump, and I keep supporting Trump. He's my president, and he's doing a great job. As a matter of fact, Mark Boughton, as a matter of fact, my communications director, Carl Higbee, he left my campaign and he moved to Washington, and I'm going to have a great relationship with the Trump administration. Mark Boughton, instead of voting for the president, he wrote the dog's name on the ballot. A shame on us. We should never do that. As far as 2014, when Tim Herbst got more votes than I did, he was running against Denise Napier, who was disliked by the media, by the Democrats, and by the Republicans. That was a race that anyone could have won but Tim Herbst. He lost it. Shame on him.
Yeah, I'm going to give, real quick, Mark Boughton.
Yeah, I just want to set the record very straight here for everybody. I love my dog. I do. But I didn't vote for her to be president. I made a really poor attempt at being humorous in a very tense time, and I think Peter took it literally. So the fact of the matter is, I supported our nominee just like everybody else in this room.
Did anybody else want to stand up and say whether they voted for Trump?
Supposed to answer this? Or?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to,
okay.
Sure.
President Trump was not my preferred candidate for the Republican nomination. I gave contributions to a number of other candidates, some of which I've worked with and known for a number of years. I voted for John Kasich in the primary. John Kasich was chairman of the Budget Committee in the House during the same time that I was Comptroller General of the United States. The 4 years that we worked together were the only 4 years that the United States had a balanced budget in the last several decades. Correlation is not causation, but I can assure you I'm a proven fiscal conservative just like he is. I voted for President Trump in the general election because I know that Washington is broken. We need a change agent. He's a change agent. I don't like his style, but he is a change agent. Hillary Clinton was not. She was status quo. And the fact is, we need a change agent in Connecticut. I'm a change agent, but we need somebody with a different style. And I have a very different style.
Mr. Herbst?
I supported the nominee of my party, and I voted for the President of the United States of America. And you know what? Let me just say this. This election is important for Connecticut Republicans as it relates to trust. It's a trust factor. Many of you have worked years for our party, stuffing envelopes, knocking on doors, helping to elect candidates. And it goes to trust, whether we will have the principles necessary to win the election. Now, the Democrats are going to try to make this election about Donald Trump in Connecticut, and I'm going to remind everyone of one fact that is indisputable. Donald Trump is not the most unpopular person in the state of Connecticut. The most unpopular person in Connecticut is Dannel Malloy. And this election is a referendum on his 8 years of failure and a legislature that's been there for 40 years not getting it done for the people of the state of Connecticut. But you know what? Elections are about vetting and choices. And look, we've got to get this out here because it's a trust factor. We have Republicans seeking this office who have not voted in elections since 2001. We have candidates on this stage that have not voted in Republican primaries in the last 20 years. We have candidates on this stage that became Republicans to run for office in the state of Connecticut. We have candidates on the stage that have given Jim Himes $1,000 in his re-election campaign. So as tried and true Republicans that have worked hard for our party for years, this election is about a trust factor. And whether you're going to have the confidence and trust in your nominee to not only win in November, and by the way, getting back to what Peter said, I ran the closest statewide election of 2014. I did something nobody on this stage has done. I won 3 out of 5 congressional districts. I won 114 out of 169 towns and cities and came within 0.6% against a 16-year incumbent who received the most votes of any candidate 4 years earlier. I am battle-tested. I have the scars to prove it. I am ready to win. I am ready to govern like a Republican, and I'm ready to lead like a Republican.
Prasad?
Mention my name.
It's not just a mention of your name, it's an attack. Was that an attack on you? I mean, he was, you know, he was just reiterating something that you said and mentioning something that you had said.
I'm a Democrat. We have the same rules over here. We're Republicans. The rules apply to everybody evenly. He mentioned my name.
I think we should move on. Prasad, I think we should move on.
This past election, the president's election, was a tough choice for a lot of us. But at the end of the day, when it became a choice between a Republican nominee and a Democratic nominee, the answer was very simple, was very straightforward. You voted for the Republican candidate. And that is my voting record out here in the open. And having said that, I promise to each and every one of you here this evening that if I am not the nominee of the Republican Party for the governor's race, of course I wish I am, and I hope I am, but if I'm not, I will have the same decency and the same respect for our party, the Republican Party, and support the nominee, because one common thing, thank you, because one common goal that we all have to accomplish together is we need to make sure we have a Republican governor in charge along with an entire slate of Republicans. That's our goal, November 18.
Is there anyone else? That question going? Gone. My question is, as Connecticut lawmakers look to ways to raise revenue, whether it be tolls and recreational marijuana. Tolls are in just about every eastern seaboard state, and many states across the country are looking at recreational marijuana. Do you support either of those? And if so or not, would you support a constitutional amendment which would allow voters to decide that, similar to Colorado and California? Dave Walker?
I do not support recreational marijuana. The federal government has recently reiterated its rights in this area. Rightly or wrongly, they have categorized marijuana as an illegal drug, and this is an issue we have to consider. Most of the people that talk about recreational marijuana talk about it for revenues rather than trying to solve the problems that we have. There are public safety and as well as personal health issues associated with that, so I do not support recreational use of marijuana. Secondly, I do support electronic tolls where you don't even slow down, where we end up imposing the tolls, which are user fees, not taxes, on out-of-state tags, And in addition to that, where we ensure the integrity of the Transportation Trust Fund, that money is only used to improve our transportation system. This is not just an issue of personal convenience. This is not just an issue of quality of life. This is an issue of the value of our homes and the ability to keep and attract businesses in this state. If we don't do something about our transportation system, it's going to get worse, not better. And by the way, when I enter the state of Connecticut, I see a sign that says, "Welcome to the state of Connecticut." Underneath it, you could see it read a sign or a line that says, "Prepare to stop." We need to change that. Thank you.
Prasad?
Legalizing marijuana. You talked about a revenue source. It is very short-sighted to think of, by legalizing marijuana, recreational marijuana, of course, the amount that you're going to bring into the coffers is going to offset the societal implications. So for us to look at a revenue source, if that's what we have to do, I would not do that. I have alternate ways. We talked about it earlier in terms of increasing our businesses. That's the way you generate revenue. You do not generate revenue through legalization of recreational marijuana because of the societal implications. We need transportation, and we heard what happened today. But for our transportation system, which is the economic engine, the engine that drives, transportation is not just getting you from place A to place B. It's much more than that. It is your engine. But to have that engine running, you need to be safe and secure that that particular box that you're going to create, the special transportation box, is going to be secure. We have shown, unfortunately, again and again, we in the minority party at the state capitol have fought this consistently, because what happens is our transportation fund gets raided over and over again. So if we put in tolls, if we generate money, goes into the box, and then guess what? It gets spent on the general fund, and that is unacceptable. A lot of things have to be done before we know we have a secure system, before we say yes to tolls. We cannot continue to just tax people and hope that our state will be prosperous. It will not happen. We've had the 2 highest tax hikes that we have ever known or seen under the Malloy administration, and guess where we are, talking about revenues again. Thank you.
Steve Obsitnik?
About 10 years ago, I got a call from a banker, and he said, "I'm sorry, I'm slashing your credit line by about 2/3. Not your fault. We're managing our risk." And what's the first thing I did? It was go to my customers that I had and hug them. You hug your customers, your most valuable customers, in time of need, because you want them to stay with you. But what Dan Malloy has done is evict our best customers. So we can talk about tax rates on different things, but there's a tax base we have to address. Okay? We evict our seniors to Florida, we exile our businesses to South Carolina, and we export our kids when we're done educating them to some other state. This is all about turning the moving vans around, and it is about getting taxes down. But the first thing you have to do to hug a customer is to say to your seniors and your most wealthy, you can hang out in Connecticut. Let's get rid of the estate tax. For every $1 it brings in, $4 are driven out. And you know what, along the way over the last couple of years, we could have cut taxes on people making $150,000 and less and still had money left over because we had more people in the restaurant. So that's just my philosophy. It is having a philosophy of keeping people around and making it affordable for them to live. The 2 ideas that were addressed there, number 1, on tolls. I'm a technology background, and I'm an engineer. I'm an evidence-based person. The state of Massachusetts brings in about $250 million a year in electronic tolling. Whenever I go to New York, I cross over the GW Bridge, it's whatever, $20, and I feel like they're building a new $1 billion bridge every week in New York. because they're using those use taxes of us going into their borders to build the infrastructure. But I will only accept that if those money go into a lockbox in the trust fund and those use taxes are put back to the purpose that it was meant to be, which is to keep our roads and bridges moving. On marijuana, as I said before, I'm a military veteran. We have medical marijuana legalized in our state. It's helped a lot of my friends who've come back from Afghanistan and Iraq because of PTSD. I hear the argument about legalizing marijuana that it's a revenue source. The Office of Financial Analysis says it's about $50 million a year. Okay? To me, that's not enough to move the needle. I think marijuana is a discussion about what our culture and values should be. But in general, I think we have to be creative and innovative to look at every source of revenue we can, mostly on the use tax, not on the income tax, because we do have to restructure that and bring it down over time. We have to drive to more consumption-based taxes. That's what states like Florida and Tennessee and others are doing, and we have to follow suit to make it more effective and less expensive for people to live here. And if you use a service, pay for a service. Thank you.
Mike Handler.
Thank you. We have a spending problem in our state, not a revenue problem. And anything we do to increase revenue has two negative effects. Number one, it takes money out of all of your pockets. But number two, and probably more importantly, it removes the impetus and the reason for cutting spending in the first place. Back in February, when Dannel Malloy pushed out our pension liabilities for an extended period of time, it cost all you $11 billion more. And that's a tragedy, but it also removed the near-term urgency to actually restructure and change our pension benefits. Tolls. We've got an infrastructure problem in our state. We've all talked about it. The problem is nothing to do with the infrastructure fund, the state transportation, special transportation fund. It has nothing to do with that. $30 million, $40 million, the shortfall that we're all talking about in 2019 is not going to solve the problem. You can't pave potholes with $30 or $40 million in our state. We need a bold solution. We need a regional infrastructure bank in our state. We need the money that we collect. We have the highest gas tax in the continental United States. The money we collect from all of you needs to be put into a fund and levered up with private funds. And we need to seriously rebuild our infrastructure. We don't need $30 or $100 million. We need tens of billions of dollars to make our state competitive and predictable, both in tax structure and in infrastructure. I want to spend a moment on marijuana for a second because it is important. You're right. Anybody that thinks marijuana, legalizing the recreational use of marijuana is going to solve our fiscal problems is delusional. But we've got a bigger issue. We've got an opiate issue in our state, and I'd much prefer that we talk on this stage about something that is an epidemic right now. The reality is, I support things that increase a child's IQ, not decreases a child's IQ. And right now, we've got big problems in our state. It's a crisis. We are losing people left and right, and it's not, no one's immune from this. You can look to your left. I was in a school, a university, in a constitutional law class not too long ago. 50 students in the class. I asked how many students in the room know somebody personally affected by the opiate crisis. Half the hands went up in the room. The person in the back of the room, the very last person in the class, had his arm in a sling from recent shoulder surgery. He offered up that he was given 90 OxyContin. The legislation we have in the books is not working. We're not holding our pharmaceutical companies accountable, and we are not working on ending this crisis. It is 100% fixable. That's a better topic to talk about than marijuana. Thank you.
Mayor Lauretti.
I would support tolls. I think it's important to be competitive with our surrounding competition, which is the surrounding New England states who all has them, provided that it didn't impact the federal dollars that we receive from Washington because of the tolls. So that's certainly a consideration. With respect to medical marijuana, recreational marijuana, I would not support that at this time. I think that there are many factors that have to be considered, some of which have already been mentioned here today. The fact that we have an opioid crisis, not only in this state but in this country, should be addressed first before we bring yet another substance into the public equation. And I know that there are a lot of social problems in other states that have recreational marijuana. And lastly, I think it's important to understand that generating revenues is important, but to pick and choose on the backs of society is not the proper approach. You can do many things to help the fiscal crisis that this state has. I started to say just before intermission that it was important for the next governor to have a very good working relationship with the state legislature. There are many things that the legislature can and should do that would help lessen the cost of living, working, and doing business in the state of Connecticut. That also includes regulation reform that is also a must. It's imperative that we encourage people and businesses to reside in our state. Connecticut was home to more Fortune 500 companies in the early 90s, and we have since lost that very distinct advantage. In case anybody doesn't understand the value that these companies bring to the table in terms of revenue and what they take out of the state is next to nothing. My equation in Shelton has allowed me to get a handle on taxes like no one else in this state. And I indicated earlier that when you don't raise taxes for 9 years in a row, there's a very distinct reason. The reason is because I have an influx of taxpayers, and they are businesses, because Shelton is affordable, and we're going to maintain our competitive edge because that's what's important to our overall success. Connecticut needs to emulate this formula.
Tim Herbst.
I agree with what Mr. Handler said about marijuana and opioids. I'd like to focus on transportation. You know, when we talk about tolls, it's very easy to say we're going to have people that are from out of state pay the tolls and our residents aren't going to pay those tolls. That's an issue of equal protection, 14th Amendment, Interstate Commerce Clause. But before we even get to that point of whether all of our residents should pay tolls, I am not going to agree to have any type of a conversation on tolls until we clean up what I heard today at that press conference that I think you both covered, where the governor announced the cancellation or the suspension of $4 billion of infrastructure projects across the state of Connecticut. And why is that happening? That's happening because the commissioner of the Department of Transportation, Jim Redeker, for the last 7 years, has not properly accounted for long-term operating expenses in the DOT budget that are funded through the Special Transportation Fund, also known as the STF. And what has happened is, because we have not minded the store on those short-term and long-term operating costs, for the first time in 10 years, we are spending the lowest levels on debt service that in any time in the last 10 years. That means we're spending less on investing in infrastructure. And what has happened is we cannot even go to Wall Street for a bond sale to borrow the money necessary to fix our roads because the State Transportation Fund is in fiscal ruin. So number one, the first thing I will do if elected governor is insist on a forensic audit of the State Transportation Fund and the Department of Transportation. We need to see how long the operating obligations are, what their costs are, how they're going to affect long-term capital planning for road upgrades and infrastructure projects. We have to create a real lockbox that is dedicated to transportation funding. You people have been hoodwinked for the last 20 years, 15 years when you were told the gas tax would solve all of our infrastructure problems. Gas tax continues to go up. The roads have never been more clogged and congested, and Metro North has never been more dysfunctional. That's what it's going to take, and until we do that, then and only then do we have a conversation on tolls.
Senator Boucher.
This governor and the majority have had 2 full terms to fix Connecticut's serious economic problems, to get us out of the Great Recession. They have failed. Republicans time after time presented budget alternatives that did not include increased taxes, did not include tolls, did not include pot, did not include a mileage tax or more casinos. The governor shut the door in our face and rejected them. He wanted to go his own way, and all that did was 2 historic tax increases and the protection of state employee benefits, and extended them out even further year after year. That has made our situation worse. So he basically set the fire, poured gasoline all over it, and then yelled out, "Fire, fire! Somebody do something," with very few good ideas or funding to do it. But these opportunities for him is to continue to push alternatives like tolls, like marijuana, like casinos, like the mileage-driven tax, taking advantage of a time when he says, oh, we ran out of money, when they spent the money out of transportation funds to keep the lights on. to balance the budget. That is the wrong place to go. We have shown through our own transportation plan that prioritizes current bonding for essentials that we can do just fine with what we have, using that money more wisely instead of buying tennis tournaments or buying stadiums or buying private parking garages, busways to nowhere. You know, this is really a serious problem. We do not have to go to tolls, marijuana, or casinos. And on tolls, I have been knee-deep in this. I have fought against it, and I'll tell you why. Not that I'm against tolls. Connecticut has the highest gas tax. Other states with tolls don't. We have an income tax with no deductions. They don't. We have a car property tax. They don't. They do not have a pension and social security tax, a real estate tax. My God, this is just another tax on all of that. And 70% of the people would be Connecticut residents being burdened. 30% out of staters. We calculated that. It would take years to really recoup any of the funds that we have lost. It's a pay cut in someone's paycheck every week, disincentivizes people. And boy, I'm sure that Mayor Boughton isn't a fan, given that 40% of the customers at the Danbury Mall are from New York City or New York State. It is the wrong place to go. We don't need to do that. We have put on the table proposals. We just need the votes to be able to push our proposals on our agenda and stop taxing Connecticut to death.
Mayor Boughton.
I just want to build a little bit on what Senator Boucher was saying. Look, this is really an issue of culture. And as somebody who served in the state legislature and people up here that have served in the state legislature, all of us know what the culture of the legislature is run by the Democrats. It's to wait until midnight or after midnight, propose some kind of crazy plan on spending or some new program when nobody's watching, when the bill is about this high and you have to read it all within an hour and jam it right through. Folks, you cannot give this current legislature any more taxing authority in any way. Tolls, whatever you want to think about. It's bad business for us. So to bring culture change, we got to do a simple thing. We got to elect 4 more state representatives to take over the House of Representatives. And we got to win 1 more Senate seat this fall to take over the state Senate. You do that, then we can have a conversation about things like lockboxes. And by the way, I hate the term lockbox. It reminds me of Al Gore, and that was a disaster. So can we not talk about lockboxes? What we need to do is get transportation funding and education funding, frankly, out of the hands of the state legislature so it cannot be politicized by individual towns or individual communities that are failing on a daily basis. This is a very simple thing. All of us in this room, and I know everybody on this dais, is committed to making sure we can win those 2 houses, and then we'll be able to have discussions about other ways in which to raise revenue, because we'll have a handle on that fact that we won't be spending it on every crazy program you could possibly think of.
Peter Lumaj.
Thank you. As far as marijuana goes, I think that is going to be a constitutional conflict because federal law supersedes state law. So I don't think we should approach it at this point. As far as tolls go, I would oppose it. Any fees upon you, any new taxes upon you and I, it is nothing else but being penalized by the government. I don't believe that the government should force you and I to move out of the state, and they are forcing us to move out of the state. What we have to do, we need some common sense conservative principles to be implemented in Hartford. The failed liberal policies of Hartford are the cause of the problem that we have. The career politicians are the problem that we have. Spending is the problem that we have. Let's start by eliminating the state income tax for anyone who's making less than $100,000 a year. Cut the state agencies by 14%, each and every one of them. Audit all of them. Instead of having all these commissioners that we have, which are cushy jobs that are being given or offered to people who are being rewarded for political supports, let's just combine certain state agencies. Let's make sure that the business tax is cut somehow. Sales tax. So we create the environment for growth. We have to spur growth. Taxes kill jobs. Fees kill jobs. And every time that we try to embrace some conservative principles, they work. Look what happened in Washington, D.C. with the tax cut that they passed. Our state just made $900 million right after the tax cut was passed. Obviously, the media is not going to give credit to President Trump because he happens to be a Republican, but the truth is that the tax cut that was passed in Washington is affecting us positively. Any tax cut that we can pass in our state, any fees that we can get rid of, is going to help us create businesses over here. Right now we have over 200 taxes in our state that they cost more to collect them than what we get in revenue. What is the point of having those taxes? But geniuses like them, they pass that law. But if I become your governor, I'll promise you that the state is going to function properly the moment I get over there. Hartford is going to have to be dismantled, and the only way to do it is through conservative principles. So if you're Republican and believe in the Constitution, unlimited government, and a state that is supposed to be the envy of the United States, and it was until 1992, please join me. Please spread the word out there that we do have a chance to get a Republican, a true Republican, a fearless Republican elected in 2018. And that guy is Peter Lumaj.
I'm not sure if there was a direct attack, but clearly the genius comment sparked some response here. So, Senator Boucher, do you want to address that?
Yes, thank you so much, and thank you for that compliment. We do have some incredible geniuses in Hartford. A couple of them are right here on the stage. Truly, truly. Remember, we have been in the minority fighting uphill and oftentimes winning. In fact, we even won a budget vote by picking off 3 state senators and 5 state reps. The governor, of course, is vetoing it, just like he's vetoing a bill we just passed just a few days ago that got overwhelming support to help seniors with their health care drug prescription program. It is absolutely incredible that we're still talking about career politicians when it's very clear that this is a part-time job and most of us work in other fields.
Yeah.
We have
Thank
been
you.
fighting. Thank
You're
you
out
very
of
much.
time. We want to keep things on track, but Prasad, I saw you wanted to address that, and then we should move on.
Thank you for calling me a genius. Even my mom has said wonderful things about me, has not said yet that I'm a genius. What Mr. Lumaj is confusing, and I hope as we move in these debates, in the next 3 debates coming up, we don't have to go through this again and again and again. We are the minority party. We fight constantly, consistently to make sure things go right in Hartford. And hopefully 2018 will be that magical year when we have the House, we have the Senate, and we have the governor's office as well. If we then fail, you can hold us accountable. Not till then, and guess what? Mr. Lumaj has not had the good fortune
Prasad?
to serve. Excuse me?
I think you're done. I'm sorry.
Excuse me?
Do you want to use more time from your allotment?
Yes.
Okay.
And I was told
Okay, so
I would
make
not
sure
be
your timer
interrupted.
goes.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
I was clearly told by Mr. Romano that when I'm doing a rebuttal, if I go beyond 40 seconds, it'll come off my bank.
Okay.
Okay.
But I want to warn you that you are not supposed to interrupt my train of thought, because what I have built up, you have lost for me, and I don't appreciate that.
Okay.
So, with this train of thought that I had you all, which was interrupted, I want to conclude by saying that it is critical for us to be in the majority, and that's what we are fighting for. This internal, oh, he is a professional politician. He's a professional legislator. It's not going to get us anywhere. It's child's play. Let's work together. Let's work as a party so Connecticut is revived and becomes prosperous again.
I don't know who's next. I don't think, why don't you ask your question?
Okay, we're out on...
I think we need to move on.
He mentioned my name, and I'm allowed to respond.
All right.
He did mention my
You
name.
have 40
and he's-
seconds.
Yeah, 40
You wanna
seconds,
take
that's
40
fine.
seconds or
I think his mother is right. He was never a genius. No politician is a genius, for sure. That's what they do for a living. They mislead people. They will never tell you the truth. And that's why you need an outsider. I'm a complete outsider. I don't know anybody anything. Nobody owes me anything. I started from nothing 30 years ago. I'm living the American dream. I did it on my own, and I'll do it for you. Create the environment by trying to get politicians out of the government and get people who are dedicated to serving instead of taking advantage of these, 50 seconds talking in front of you and telling you what wonderful things they're doing for us. They're not doing anything for us. Unless you and I do it, they're not going to do it for us. They failed us in the past. They're going to fail us in the future. Please don't give them a second chance. I wouldn't do it for myself.
Okay, we're done now. Go ahead.
I think we've exhausted that question. So the Me Too movement has touched almost every industry from Hollywood to Washington. Have you ever been accused of sexual harassment? Or what would you change about the state's sexual harassment policies? Go ahead. David?
I got married at the end of my sophomore year in college. I've been married to the same woman ever since. I've never been accused of sexual harassment, and I never will be. But let me tell you what. I think it is an outrage that public money is being used in order to pay for settlements of alleged sexual harassment situations in Washington and elsewhere in this country. And I think it is absolutely mandatory that any politician, whether it be in Washington, in Hartford, or any place else, who have used public money to settle a private sexual harassment, that name needs to come out. We need to know how much money there was. Yes, we should protect the privacy of the aggrieved party if they don't want to be named, but we have the right to know who those people are. We have a right to know how much money was used, and we need to ban that from now on.
Mr. Obsitnik?
I took an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, and I take that very seriously. And a lot of that comes character, and especially graduating from Annapolis, how you're trained to treat people you work with and you lead. I have never sexually harassed anyone, a man or a woman, and I think it's a great question to know of any candidate, Republican or Democrat, because people should know the answer to that. But to answer your question, in Connecticut, there are no statute of limitations on sexual assault or harassment of a child. I think that should be expanded to any person of any age. I don't know why there is a limitation on that. Second of all, do you realize that we have thousands of rape kits sitting on the shelf that Connecticut does not test? We need to kind of get our thinking around to kind of treat people the way we would treat our mother or our grandmother or my daughters. And I have 2 daughters that I cherish, and I treat everyone in my life the way I would treat them. Thank you.
We have Mr. Handler.
So I'm very glad you asked this question tonight, and it was missing from the last debate, given what was happening in the news. Sarah and I have 4 daughters. I can't think of anything worse than having to come forward and the strength and courage that women have to go through to come forward and present evidence against harassment. I only hope, and I'm encouraged by what I'm hearing tonight, I only hope that the men in this world have the courage to stand up and actually act to change the culture of what we have going on in our society. This has got to stop.
And Mayor Herbst?
I have never been accused of sexual harassment, and in point of fact, I have discharged people from employment. I've terminated people's employment for sexual harassment and for inappropriate relationships in the workplace, because I'm acutely sensitive to what kind of environment that creates for not only the victim, but for those that work in the same environment. And let me just say this. Hartford and Hartford insiders play by their own set of rules. And you know what? There are people in this audience and there are people on this stage that have heard the stories out of Hartford. And I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say it once. If I am elected governor, one of the first places the Inspector General is going to start is to investigate cases of sexual harassment in either the executive branch or the legislature that were swept under the carpet or silenced to protect somebody's political career. Because when you do it once, it's going to keep happening. And when I'm elected governor, I pledge this: zero tolerance. Those who engage in it will be held accountable, and those who cover it up will also be held accountable.
Mayor Lauretti.
Well, I can say that over my 26 years as mayor that I've been accused of a lot of things, never sexual harassment. You know it, and never lowering the taxes either. You know, when you are an employer, you have very specific responsibilities and obligations and standards that have to be set. So you understand wholeheartedly, or you don't stay in that job very long. And so with that said, we have always monitored very closely these types of activities, and as was mentioned just a moment ago, people have been dismissed from the workplace for inappropriate behavior. That's the right thing to do. The workplace is a place where you expect performance and results out of people, and they don't need to be detoured by things that are just plain wrong.
Representative Srinivasan.
Zero tolerance to sexual abuse, sexual harassment anywhere would be my top priority as far as answering your question is concerned. And number two, right now in this short legislation coming up starting in February, there is already conversation of legislation being introduced that will remove the statute of limitations that Steve just talked about in adults. And I can assure you that we'll have a lot of discussion, a lot of public input, and I hope you're there with your voices telling us loud and clear what needs to be done, because I know in my heart what we need to do in our state.
Senator Boucher.
I need the microphone coming.
I need a mic.
We may let you take that home. Maybe.
Using one's position of power to a purpose that may be nefarious, or to force someone into an activity that they're not comfortable with is one of the worst things that can happen in a workplace. As women, mothers, and daughters, we want to be judged by our capabilities, first and foremost, to be respected for what our capabilities, our abilities are to be able to advance oneself in whatever career endeavor that they're in. So this discussion is very important, and I appreciate the tremendous support by my fellow exploratorian candidates behind me, because there is no question we should eliminate any support, financial support, for these kinds of lawsuits to be paid off by. Many of us didn't even know that this kind of fund even existed. So it is important for us to have this discussion. I might say something positive with respect to my own various careers, that I've been very fortunate to have male mentors, some of which elevated me to the highest positions in a large firm because of their trust in me and my capabilities. So there are really wonderful leaders and business people that really do value what a person can bring no matter what their gender is. And on a lighter note, I must tell you that I was invited to be on a cable show in Waterford about a month ago, and we had a call in, and there was a woman that called in, and she said, I have 2 questions for you, Senator Boucher. She says, first of all, have you ever colluded with the Russians? And number 2, have you ever been a subject of a sexual harassment lawsuit? And I just was floored. It was so funny. I said, well, first of all, I do have Russians in my district, and we do share recipes. And number 2, no, I don't believe I have. I have a pretty boring life and a husband that I've been married to for decades. So I guess, we just had a really, fun time with that answer. But this is, no question, a very important discussion, and this will bring a sea change, I believe, for the better.
Mayor Boughton.
Yes, like other communities that you've heard from tonight, we have a zero tolerance policy in the city of Danbury for any kind of harassment, not just sexual, but that could be cases of stalking and other issues as well. In addition, I've had to terminate people who have engaged in that kind of behavior, and those are difficult conversations to have, but they must be had. I think if we need work to do on some of these items, it relates to reporting and how well we're reporting. We want to make sure that we don't do things that will chill an individual's ability to report an instance where they felt that they were somehow exploited. So we've got to make sure that those controls and those mechanisms are in place.
Thank you. The next question has to do with regionalization. Connecticut has 169 towns that are all very unique and individual. Some towns share resources. The school we're in right now is a regional high school. How do we encourage more of our municipalities to do that, whether it's education, whether it's water, sewer? How do you bridge some of the contract negotiations and encourage that to save the state hundreds of millions of dollars? Steve Obsitnik?
Yeah, I've been an entrepreneur and a CEO of high-tech businesses for 15 years. And I think we need to bring innovation to this problem. Number one, I don't think it should be mandated down by Hartford that this happens. In Westport and Weston, a few years ago, they said, why do we need two Department of Healths? Why don't we just pull it together and rationalize our cost? We have something like 91 911 systems in this state. In Minnesota, we helped to create one 911 system for the state of Minnesota, saving them tens of millions of dollars. I believe it has to be more market-driven or driven by the local towns to what they want to do. But what can Hartford do? I just heard of a great idea the other day. The same way that my businesses, startup companies, were incented by capital to grow, maybe Hartford has to create a fund that says if regions do experiment, and if you do want to create a regional high school, okay, maybe we'll give you funds to adapt that line of thinking or to adapt that service. But I think it should be more along the idea of how do we use those type of startup funds to create ideas that then can be leveraged across the state. I don't think it's Hartford saying put in another layer of government, because whenever Hartford gets more money and puts in another layer of government, we know what happens, the structural deficits and the problems that we have, and it just won't work. This has to be driven from the local level up with some support from Hartford to allow the creativity and innovation to happen. Thank you.
Peter Lumaj?
I think it should be voluntary, and Hartford has not produced a lot of wisdom in the past number of years, but both Mr. Boughton and Tim Herbst actually supported that when it came from Hartford. They wanted to have it, then he decided to withdraw from it right before he decided to run for governor. So I think what we need actually is the local governments should make these decisions instead of Hartford. If Hartford itself is failing and is as at the verge of bankruptcy, why should they dictate the local governments how to run their own affairs? The other thing is this: unless we limit Hartford itself as to its activities that is affecting you and I on the daily basis, I don't think that smaller communities like Fairfield, where I live in, can function properly. When they passed the budget this time and when we had the CBAC, I think that we should introduce legislation that is going to bring the unions back to the renegotiating table by introducing legislation to turn our state into a right-to-work state. Only something that forces to cut spending in Hartford, such as drastic measures, are going to change the way we do business in our state. You cannot lead certain way of doing business in our communities, the smaller communities, by being dictated by Hartford. So I think regionalization should be optional, not mandatory.
Dave Walker?
Let me be clear. The last thing we need in Connecticut is another layer of government. Secondly, the state is broke. At the same point in time, we have 169 cities and towns. Many of them are doing things on their own with huge redundancy, inefficiency, waste, and abuse. And so I do think that, A, we don't need another level of government, but the state needs to find a way to encourage municipalities on their own to move more towards shared services. And quite frankly, since the state's broke, the municipalities are going to get less help. And therefore, that in and of itself will provide an incentive for them to look for ways to economize and to do more shared services.
Mayor Lauretti.
I think this question goes to the heart of what I was trying to say earlier about rather than pointing to any one thing about what you would do or what you would eliminate. There are many things that have to be done to solve this economic problem that we have in Connecticut. When you're a local official and you have relationships with other local officials that surround your borders, you have a tendency to do just that, share services. I could think of many opportunities in the town of Trumbull when we supplied a grinder to chop up brush for them, and they in turn gave us a few vehicles. Snow plowing, when you have tenuous situations that occurred about 3 years ago when we got 4 feet of snow, we were receiving mutual aid from other towns. We have mutual aid opportunities with police, fire, and ambulance. We have interlocal agreements with surrounding towns for the WPCA, the wastewater treatment facilities. I think that the bigger ticket items that can be controlled by the state and are not. As an example, if you look at a couple of regions around the state where they have allowed to these smaller towns to build local high schools, as opposed to the arrangement that they had before when they were regional high schools. Without naming names, there are several around the state in the last 10 years where that occurred. It's a big expense for the state and the municipality to put a new high school in operation. And so, as I said earlier, I think that it's important for the new governor to have a working relationship with the legislature, because these are things that the legislature can help us all in cutting our cost.
Tim Herbst.
My name was mentioned earlier, so am I going to use my 40 seconds or my time? Or both? Mr. Lumaj mentioned my name.
I think both.
You can use both.
I'd like to use the 40 and not have it count towards the 2, and then we'll, okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Regionalization works best when innovative municipal leaders at the local level find efficiencies and consolidations that save their taxpayers money. Regionalization doesn't work, and regionalization gets out of control, and regionalization creates another layer of government when it is mandated. Now, one thing that Mr. Lumaj mentioned, I withdrew the town of Trumbull from the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities. Not once, but twice. I did it at the beginning of my term, and then they said, oh, we've changed our ways, come back, and then I came back. And the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities commissioned a report that they said would make government more efficient, more effective, make the state more affordable. The Connecticut Office of Fiscal Analysis, a nonpartisan office, reviewed that report, and they concluded that the CCM plan would result in a $900 million tax increase and $2.5 billion of additional spending. I was not about to be associated with that, and I was also not about to be associated with an organization that advocated for an additional increase in the sales tax. We have a spending problem, not a revenue problem. And I will conclude by saying this in response to what my friend over here said. For a lot of talk tonight about career politicians. And you know what? Let me tell you something, Peter. When you're a leader and you govern, and you get the 3 a.m. phone call from your chief of police in the middle of a crisis, and when you have to work with your superintendent in making budget decisions that affect the lives of thousands of people, and when you have to respond to weather-related emergencies, and when you make decisions every single day that affect people's quality of life, their school system, their safety, then, and only then, you can lecture me about career politicians. And guess what? The last person on this stage that I want getting the 3 a.m. phone call as governor is Peter Lumaj.
Peter Lumaj has 40 seconds to respond, and then we're going to...
40 seconds. That's fine. I'm just joking. Actually, this is not the only thing that Timi's
Or
been
out
doing.
of your time.
Right before he decided to run for governor, not to run because for first selectman because he knew he was going to lose, all of his friends got an extended contract, which will be binding for the next administration he's down. So his friends did very well under his administration. But regardless of what he's saying, the concern that we should have right now, as an outsider, if you were to choose an outsider who's going to have the character and the fortitude to be your leader, should not be someone who has never held a job since he graduated from high school, outside of government. Just think about it. I've never held a job in government, but he's never held a job out of government. Can you really trust him to run your lives?
All right.
Okay.
All right, we're going to move on now. We want to keep this nice and polite as we can, okay? We're going to Mike Handler, please.
I'm going to use some of my time here just to end this nonsense. Here's the reality. I asked you all at the very beginning of this debate
That's it. In closing.
that you had a job to do. I told you all had a job to do, and that is to hold all of us accountable. We've got serious problems in our state. The question you asked is about shared services. The good news is, and it was mentioned earlier, that the boots on the ground, the public safety departments, they're already doing that. And that's the way it should be done. But what we're doing here tonight is an embarrassment. This is not the way we should be responding to questions. It's good theater, it's good red meat for everybody, and it's good for the media, but it's not good for all of our taxpayers and our residents of Connecticut. Enough is enough.
All right. Senator Boucher.
On the topic of regional government, I actually lived under regional government for a period of years, away from Connecticut, and I learned very quickly that government that is closest to the people governs best. I watched as resources moved from one political side of the region to another versus on actual need or priority. It becomes very political. And right now, the proposal for regional government only feeds the addiction of spending that this state has, because then they don't have to send back your tax dollars to your municipalities. So I am absolutely opposed to regional government, and I do agree with both David Walker and with Tim Herbst on their point of view with regards to having it be voluntary. Remember, a lot of Westchester people move to our towns to get away from regional government and those taxes.
Prasad.
In my administration, towns and municipalities will decide what is best for them. There will be no mandate, there will be no regulation coming from Hartford telling what towns and municipalities have to do.
Mayor Boughton.
I just want to add on a couple of thoughts that people had here this evening. Look, we have 169 communities or cities and towns across Connecticut, and they became 169 cities or communities across Connecticut because there were differences in each of the area. People have made choices with their money. They've invested in their homes, they've invested in their property, they decided this is where I want to live, this is where I want to put down my roots. So I don't support a regional government, but I do support governments working together, as been mentioned, on a voluntary basis, where they can share equipment, share ideas, and where they're able to come together and save the taxpayer money. Because here's one thing that we all know. There is no more land. So all of us on the municipal level are on that treadmill of trying to grow our grand list to be able to meet expenses of costs that continue to escalate each year because the legislature, led by the Democrats, has been too afraid to deal with the challenges that face us each and every day. They can't say no to anything. As a municipal leader, I unfortunately have to say no almost every day. I do it very nicely, but I have to say no every day. Because at the bottom line here is that I work for you, the taxpayers of this state and taxpayers of my city. And so I remember who I represent in that room. And I just want to warn you about something. I want to give you a cautionary warning. There's a new movement going on in the legislature. The Democrats have spent every dime they possibly can and emptied out our rainy day fund. They're now coming for our money at the local level, be it in services or be it in just outright spending. I'll give you one quick example because it's kind of humorous and I think we need a little levity at the end of the night, which has been a difficult and challenging evening for some of us. The latest project I've had to deal with at the City of Danbury is finding somebody to monitor bingo games. I have to send somebody out at night to go and check on the bingo game to make sure somebody's not using the double dot blue thing or pulling the right number out there, because the state of Connecticut has said we're not doing this anymore, but it has to be done. Now, we could chuckle and laugh about that, but that costs money. And it's ridiculous that I've got to go out and look for an employee to do that. So now I got to have, like, all right, who wants to do the bingo thing? Do I got to pull somebody's name out of the hat? How are we going to do that? And that's happening in every aspect. Just recently, state said you got to cut out some of your family resource centers at your public schools. Fine, no problem. We don't want to do it, but the funding's not there. Now what's happening is the state has come back to us and said, oh, no, City of Danbury, you have to now pay for the cost of those employees. Folks, that's your money. That's our money. And we can't see and build our future if we spend all of our time trying to make up for the largesse of the state assembly, state government, and the governors we've had. As your next governor, I want to watch every nickel that we have. I want to make sure that we invest in smart projects. I'm going to encourage people to work together when they can, and they want to remain one of those 160 cities and towns on their own on a particular issue. God bless them.
Thank you. And so we're going to go to closing statements. Each of you will get a minute and a half, and we're going to start with Mr. Handler at the other end. I am aware that you have time left. I was told that the debate is over by your chairman. JR says we're closing out the debate, so we'll start with Mr. Handler.
Once again, David, those of us who manage our time wisely get penalized. That's okay. I'll tell you what, I just mentioned your name, you get 40 seconds, you mention my name, I'll go on all night. Listen, we live in a beautiful state. There are a lot of things that we have to be proud of. What we're suffering from is a self-inflicted wound. This is not done by accident. When I got to Stanford, I found massive financial and fiscal mismanagement, all with a common theme, all with making the current day feel better at the expense of tomorrow. Literally every single trick and gimmick you could play to steal from tomorrow was done in the city. We have to be a strong state with vibrant cities. Look at our 4 struggling cities in this state. You can't attract people into our state with failing cities. We've got to be very mindful of your money. It was alluded to earlier about a cut in services that the state's mandating. But we all saw what the Democrats' proposal would have looked like to raise revenue. 1/3 of the teachers' unfunded pensions pushed on to all 169 towns would have driven up your real estate prices 12 to 13% and driven down the value of your biggest asset, your nest egg. That's what's at stake. That's what we're fighting for. As governor, I want to have strong cities, but I don't want to throw good money after bad. I do not want to take money from the towns that are doing it right and the cities that are doing it right and funnel into cities that are still operating the same way Stanford was 5.5 years ago. Thoroughly unacceptable. We've got a lot of things that we've got to focus on, and there are a lot of good ideas on privatization of businesses. We've done that in Stanford, but the reality is that's not going to move the needle. We've got a $100 billion crisis that we've got to address. I'm not running to get the job. I'm running to do the job and have the experience and the capabilities to actually accomplish a job. I want to thank the moderators. Most importantly, I want to thank my loving wife, Sarah, for all of your support. Thank you all.
My top priority in testing the waters for governor is because, like you, I love the state of Connecticut and I want to restore its economy and jobs to make it competitive again. I believe we can do this by eliminating the state income tax, by returning to 1991 tax structure of consumption, dividend, and interest taxes, at the same time reducing cost and spending with regards to our pensions and our health care costs, and totally restructuring our state agencies, zero-based budgeting, having them justify every single line item. To do this, to put any plan in place, we have to earn the trust of many people on the other side of the aisle, independents and Democrats. I received this letter not long ago that just blew me away. I didn't really know who the person was. It was a handwritten note. I read it late at night. I'm going to read it to you. Dear Toni, it's come to my attention that you're considering a run for the office of governor. I hope you do it. As a member of the other party, there comes a time to put partisan politics aside and do the right thing. Connecticut needs you to set us back on the right track. You will have my complete support should you run. In many ways, you remind me of Ella Grasso. I truly felt she was one of the very best governors this state has ever seen. She was a short Italian woman. Just remember, and this is what really got me in my gut, we will be judged by our integrity, dedication, commitment, and courage. I believe
Senator Boucher?
you have all four. Please run.
Thank you.
I want to thank you all for coming tonight. This is a tremendous honor for me, having lived in this state my entire life, going through the public school system, going to college at Trinity, and being the son of public school teachers that went through and put themselves through the public university system here in the state of Connecticut. The reality of Connecticut lived up to the promise of Connecticut many generations ago, but that reality doesn't seem possible today. And if ever there was a time that we send people to Hartford that are prepared to make the tough decisions and are prepared to lead through tough times, the time is now. And here is my pledge to you. It's my lead by example pledge. I will refuse donations from Hartford lobbyists. I will refuse a pension as governor. I will insist that those that work for me do the same. I will go to work bringing the kinds of reforms that are necessary to eliminate the perks, the privileges, and the big egos. I will go to Hartford to take on the Hartford insiders and the corrupt culture under the Gold Dome. And I will do so without fear or favor, to do what is right for every single person in the state of Connecticut. Tomorrow can be greater than today. The reality of Connecticut can live up to the promise of Connecticut. But that starts by sending proven reformers and Hartford outsiders, but most importantly, a new generation of leaders to Hartford to set a better example. So as we look back on this time in our history and we see better days, we realize that we left a better future for our children and our children's children by leading by example and committing to causes greater than our own self-interest in setting our state back on track. I want to thank you all for being here. Drive safe. God bless you all.
Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to be here tonight, and thank you for coming and listening to what we have to say in terms of who our next leader of this great state will be. You know, I made a conscious decision 26 years ago to get involved in government, and my goal was to make a difference, and I think that I have. I think the thing that is single most important to the state is creating a climate of affordability. Even for the people who can afford to be here, they choose not to because Connecticut has become too punitive. So those things need to change. Consistency and predictability are so important. When you have a stable tax base, and you can only accomplish that by growing your revenue stream, it is a well-known fact that you're not going to increase revenues by raising taxes. That's been proved time and time again, particularly with the state of Connecticut. I, on the other hand, at the local level, have proved to people that if you maintain a stable and predictable tax rate, that you will grow your revenue stream. So for 26 years, I've provided balanced budgets, budget surpluses, 100% paid funded pensions, and a grand list that has had 26 years of consecutive growth. It has allowed us to expand our corporate community. It has allowed us to be able to reinvent our city in terms of what our downtown looked like from the old industrial turn of the century that most of New England and Connecticut looked like, because once upon a time, we made things in this great state. So we need to get back there, particularly in our inner cities. We need to bring manufacturing back to create job opportunities for our residents that live there, to lift them out of poverty. So I thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight, and God bless.
Connecticut is in a state of crisis. It's on life support. As a physician, I'm well aware of the importance of addressing the underlying disease. You just don't treat symptoms. Band-Aids don't work, and Band-Aids will stop. As a physician, I'm well aware and make difficult decisions all times of the day, 24/7, at 3 in the morning as well. I know it is important, and I know how difficult it is to make those decisions, but I make them. As a physician, when patients come to the office, I'm concerned of what is their problem, come up with a game plan, and obviously discuss that and resolve the issues. I don't see them as independents, Democrats, or Republicans. I see them with problems, and my job is to resolve those problems. That same skill set is what I will bring to the executive office, and that is why independents and the crossover Democrats will come over to our party.
Thank you.
So that we become victorious in 2018. Thank you.
Well, let me just thank my wife and my family for being here tonight and for putting up with me actually for, almost a year now, traveling all over the state. Hey, I wasn't referring to you, man. Come on, my wife is there. Look, I've been asked the question, why am I conservative? At the age of 20, I had to make the hardest decision in my life with my brothers to escape communist Albania. And if I were to do it over again, I would do it over again just to come to the United States to live the American dream. Knowing what waits people here, sometimes it's worth it taking certain risks. I'm taking a risk. I'm running as a conservative. I'm one of the only ones, actually the only one, who's a conservative on this stage. I'm absolutely conservative and I'm proud of it. If I were your governor, I would start by reforming the tax code, regulations, and mandates. I'll introduce legislation to turn our state into the right-to-work state, and I would refer the welfare system. I will get rid of the sanctuary cities, and I'll be a proud Republican to fight as hard as possible for those conservative principles which have made this nation great. Those are principles that the founding fathers gave us, that a limited government, it is the best government that humankind can devise. It is a government that functions properly and allows you and I to live in freedom, to live in liberty, and to pursue our dreams. I will promise you tonight that if I were your governor, I will establish those principles in our great state once again. May God bless you, may God bless the United States of America, and have a great night. Thank you.
Thank all of you for coming. Thank you for moderating. The USS Connecticut was a battleship. It was the flagship of the great fleet that went around the world during Teddy Roosevelt's time. Connecticut used to be a flagship state. It's now a sinking ship. But it's not too late to save this great state. I talked about making government smaller, more economical, more efficient, more effective. Let me give you an example. When I was the Comptroller General of the United States, head of the GAO, Auditor General of the United States, head of all the Inspector Generals as well, I ended up making my agency 13% smaller, 1/3 less offices, 60% less organizational units, eliminated a layer of management, increased productivity 90%, engaged in a range of public-private partnerships, ended up increasing the return on investment for the taxpayers of the United States by triple to $110 to 1. Saved the American people $380 billion over 10 years, which is more than 20 years of total spending for the state of Connecticut. In addition, I have worked with other governors to be able to restructure pension and health care arrangements, which is absolutely essential in order to save this state. I have decided, and my wife, thank you for being here, and thank you for being married since my college days, I have decided to fight rather than flee. Hope is on the horizon. We can do this, but it's not just governor. It's also taking the Senate and the House. It's time to turn this state red to create a better future, but I will work with Democrats to achieve bipartisan solutions. But we must achieve control of the legislature, because many of the things that are necessary to be accomplished will require legislation. Thank you very much. Good night.
I want to say also thank you for taking time on a cold, middle-of-the-week evening to come out and listen to me and these other candidates. We have been down a road to ruin for 30 years, since I graduated from Stanford High. And we've been led by career politicians, regardless of what you've heard tonight. Their way has only made it worse. If they had solutions, they would have solved it years ago. But they didn't bring the creativity and the innovation that's required in the 21st century. The first night I went to see to the Arctic Circle, my captain took me back to the engineering space, and he said, "Steve, I'm going to give you one leadership lesson. Leaders set tone, tone creates a culture, culture creates destiny. Leaders set tone, tone creates a culture, culture creates a destiny." We have a governor who is a chief apologizer. That's his tone. We have a legislature on the Democratic side for 40 years that has set a tone that has evicted people to Florida and exiled businesses out. My tone will be very different. I will be the chief economic development officer of this state. I will be the chief transformational officer on the fiscal side. My plan will reinvent Connecticut around restoring fiscal security to our state and creating industry-led, vibrant ecosystems to breathe life back into our cities. So thank you for having me here tonight, and I look forward to being your next governor. Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to thank the Connecticut State Party for hosting this event. Our moderators, thank you for the great work you did this evening. Folks, my name is Mayor Mark Boughton. I've been the mayor of the city of Danbury for many years now, and I'm proud of the job they've done there. I've earned a lot of awards, and our city's earned a lot of awards and accolades. We've had some of the lowest unemployment rates, some of the lowest tax rates, some of the lowest sewer and water rates of any major city in Connecticut, and I'm proud of all that. But the number one award that I'm most proud of that we just received about 3 months ago was we were just rated as the best place to start a business in. And the key to our future is repairing our relationship with the businesses of Connecticut, to letting them know that we believe in them, we want them to stay here, and we want them to expand here. I'm willing to do that as your next governor. We have a plan to rebuild our state government and reorganize it and right-size it. We have a plan to phase out the income tax over the next 10 years. We have a plan to be able to downsize every piece and every aspect of our government to be exactly what we need it to be to service our residents in the way that we know how to do that. But I'm going to make a special pledge here to you today, besides all those other things. When you come calling, when Eastern Connecticut comes calling for the governor's office because they've got a problem with their foundations, I will be there with you to fix that problem, and we won't stop until it's finished. This has been a great opportunity tonight. God bless you. God bless America. It's a great country, the greatest in the world. Thank you.
Well, everyone, I personally want to take the time to thank the men and women on the stage tonight, because these are the people that are throwing their lives in the lion's den to fight for this state. And what I encourage all of you to do is find the candidate that you want to support, and you volunteer your time, you donate your money. Because without the people in this room, without the people on the stage, we do not save this state. We often romanticize about the founding, about the Constitution, and what those men and women did for our country. So if they need you on a Saturday night to make phone calls, please do it. Because otherwise we will not win. Because the Democrats are not going to give it to us. So I encourage you over the next few weeks to get involved. You've been a great audience, and have a round of applause for these candidates.